The story begins in an arena at a historic moment, with the announcer announcing the finals of the Era Pro League's Path to the Strongest tournament, where the ultimate showdown takes place between the immortal god of war Lin Jie and the genius sword Saint Bailey Changcheng, two undefeated legends. And, as both fighters charge at each other with everything they have, the announcer wonders whether a level of power, like the one they are witnessing, and such a refined technique are truly something an ordinary player can achieve through training alone. Then, the announcer comments that Lin Ji, the immortal war emperor of the Berserker class, Era's #1 warrior, is advancing without a single opening, and that every strike is aimed directly at the vital points, making him practically a Shura from hell, until Bali Changcheng of the Sword Saint class has his defense broken. Because of this, Lin Jie opens up an overwhelming advantage, since Bali can no longer fight, and as soon as he is warned that the MC's opponent's health is in critical condition, the announcer shouts that, from the looks of it, it seems the champion of the path to the strongest has already been decided. Lin Jie approaches the Sword Saint and comments that it seems he defeated him this time. Bali lowers his head, wondering if he really lost, until he gives a sinister smile and makes it clear that he cannot lose. So, he begins to release a powerful energy, and as he stands up, while the energy spreads throughout the entire arena, he comments that, if he uses such power, all of the Berserker's effort will mean nothing. That said, the Sword Saint activates his infinite weapon durability skill. With that, Bailey manages to repair his sword, leaving Lin Ji confused, trying to understand what the hell just happened. Then, the blonde guy spends 500,000 yuan to activate his super speed and then charges forward with everything he has. The Berserker gets worried, wondering if what his opponent used was a cheating item. However, he barely has time to think before he already has to block the attack and dodge the second one. Bailey calls Lin Xie an idiot and asks if he still thinks effort can change fate, because he doubts he will ever understand that. While struggling to defend himself, the Berserker thinks that his opponent is way too fast and that he can barely keep up with his movements, until Bailey spends another 900,000 yuan to activate teleportation and appears behind Lin Ji. Then, the blonde guy spends 1,200,000 yuan to activate sudden death and then drives his sword with full force into the Berserker, who is quickly notified that he has been killed by Bailey Changcheng. Because of this, the loser's account will be permanently deleted and all assets will be transferred to the winner. As he falls to his knees on the ground, Lin Jie wants to know why the blonde guy betrayed him. Completely frustrated, the Berserker wants the Sword Saint to answer why he had to cheat just to defeat him. And on top of that, he even broke the promise they made together. Bali apologizes and, while delivering the final blow, comments that, in the next life, he will pray for them to be brothers. Lin Jie is notified that he has lost his qualification to play and that the system will be restarted. While being removed from the game, he thinks that he cannot accept this fate, since he has in mind that ever since he was born, he was thrown to the bottom of society, with no money, no support, and no power. But he believed that if he worked hard enough, he could change everything. So, with his own hands, he fought his way to the top of the rankings. Besides, he was one step away from the throne he had longed for so much. And this time, he had even bet his life on it. But even so, he ended up losing everything. So, he thinks that if he had one more chance to start over, he would do anything to reach the top. And, as soon as another notification arrives saying that he has lost his qualification to play, Lin Jie wakes up in shock until he gets confused about something and immediately wonders where he is and whether, by any chance, he has returned to his room. A girl appears, calling out to him and wanting to know why he is lying on the floor. Lin Ji recognizes the girl's voice and wonders if it could be his sister, because, as far as he remembers, she had been in a coma for 3 years because of an accident, and if it were not for the support of the intensive care unit, she would not have survived. So, he used every cent he earned in the game to pay for her treatment. Then, without thinking twice, the MC runs over to her, holds her, and, extremely desperate, wants to know if she is okay, and whether, by any chance, she should not be in the hospital. The MC's sister throws him hard to the floor and, while putting him in a chokehold and a leg lock, wants to know if her brother has gone crazy since he stayed awake all night and is now pretending that he lost his memory. Then, she wants to know who was glued to the television waiting for the game to launch all night. Upon hearing that he spent the entire night waiting for the game's release, the MC becomes intrigued and immediately asks what day it is and what year they are in. His sister calls him an idiot and tells him that it is the launch day of Era OL. Lin Jie concludes that then it is June 22nd, 5 years ago, and after taking a better look at his body, he realizes that it is not a dream. Then he concludes that he really has returned, since he remembers that at that moment, when he was betrayed by Baili Changcheng, he felt absolute despair. But even so, it seems fate has turned in his favor, since, from the looks of it, he has gained a second chance at everything. With that in mind, he fills with confidence and swears that this time, he will reach the top of the game era. Then he reflects that, with 3 years of savings from part-time jobs, plus the 100,000 he borrowed from loan sharks, if he has this money, he thinks he can buy a virtual reality headset and restart the game from zero. After all, the virtual reality online game era grew alongside the players over time and became a massive craze, becoming an endless, unknown, and impressive world where everyone became addicted to exploring that reality. And the MC, the guy who became known as the immortal god of war, climbed to the top using common equipment through skill and effort alone. And everyone called him a technical player. Because of that, he earned respect among ordinary players. Lin Jie, remembering that he was only one step away from reaching the top of the rankings, regrets that he was so close to the absolute peak. But in the end, his best friend, Baili Changcheng, was carried away by a certain power. Then, he became the enemy who betrayed him and stole his title. So, he wants to know when he started planning this and why. However, he ends up deciding that thinking about it right now is useless, since what matters is this second chance he has received. And as soon as he puts on the virtual reality headset, he swears that he will make sure the same mistakes do not happen again. Upon entering the game, he is welcomed to Era OL. Then, he is asked to choose a class, and, after that, join the players from all over the world and begin his journey in the vast and limitless world. Lin Jie has in mind that in the previous timeline, the game's team never released any guide, and everyone entered completely blind, exploring everything from zero. But he knows that, since he played for 5 years in that future, to him, this game has almost no secrets. Besides, he knows that strategy and exploration will be much easier, and that this is his greatest advantage. And, while living everything again, this time, he will achieve what he could not before. He will reach the top of Era, and he will be the strongest. And, as soon as he is taken to a city, he thinks that the king of technique has returned. A few minutes later, in the center of the beginner village square, the MC walks through the place while hearing some players wondering how anyone still plays Warrior nowadays, since it is literally at the bottom of the class list, and no one even gives it a second glance. Besides, he does not even have a decent weapon and is already acting like he owns the place. Lin Jie laughs and simply stays quiet because he knows the players are talking about him since he chose the Warrior class. His current stats are 125 health points, attack from 1 to 4 damage, 1 point in defense, 3 in strength, 5 in magic, 3 in agility, 1 in intelligence, 1 in spirit, and 3 points in willpower. The MC gives a faint smile and thinks that this is what people are thinking, that the version of him who came back is still from the Warrior class. Then, he remembers that 2 years ago, when he was with his best friend, he commented that even if he had to start everything over again, he would still choose the Warrior class without thinking. Bailey comments that, in the end, he thinks the Warrior class is the class only the weakest players choose, since they cannot pay for expensive equipment, do not use flashy magic, and only take hits on the front line by relying on their own bodies. That said, he emphasizes that warriors are basically cannon fodder. Then, Bailey calls out to his friend and comments that if he really wants to play in the strongest way possible, he should have chosen the Sword Saint class, which is elegant and lethal. Lin Jie makes it clear that he believes in the growth path of a warrior because the more pressure they face, the more they can endure, and the stronger the enemy, the stronger they end up becoming. Since only by surviving each crisis does a person earn the right to become the immortal god of war, with a build starting from level 0. That said, he also emphasizes that only those who survive countless battles can obtain such a title. Bailey wanted to know if he was sure that such a title would still exist after that day. The MC smiled and wanted to know if his friend wanted to make a bet. The Sword Saint wanted to know what kind of bet it would be. Lin Jie, very excited, said that after they returned to that day, he would continue being the immortal god of war. Then, after remembering that, the MC was thinking that the greatest advantage of a warrior is health points, and that even if someone is poor, they will not fall from a single hit from a mini-boss. And, after completing a mission, they can advance to a higher class, which, in his case, was the choice he made in his past life, the Berserker, which trades health points for combat power. So, he knows that pay-to-win players only care about the highest damage or appearance. Mages, sword saints, archers, assassins, all of them are full of fans. So, he knows that, because of this, 9 out of 10 groups a person sees are just combinations of these DPS classes. But with the absurd attributes of monsters at the beginning of the game, these classes will barely be able to stay on their feet, let alone stop to deal damage. And since warriors have an advantage in survival at the beginning, the disadvantages are compensated for by the experience he has. At that moment, the MC receives a system alert informing him about the beginner arrival mission and that he needs to report to Outlet in Mel City. The remaining time for this to happen is 5 minutes. And as soon as the MC gets close to the beginner instructor, he comments that he did not think he would see the old man again, and that it even feels somewhat nostalgic. However, someone calls the MC a trash warrior and comments that he bumped into him. Balai, a level 2 paladin, wants to know if the MC wants to pass, because if he does, he will have to pay 1 copper coin in the name of the Holy Light. Lin Jie has in mind that paladin is the favorite class of rich beginners, a versatile class that balances damage, healing, and control. But he ends up intrigued because the game opened about half an hour ago and the player is already level 2. It is completely the classic scheme he had already seen on the forums in his past life, in which they create the character and buy the experience package right away. Then, they exploit the weaker players to extort a protection fee. But he knows that, in reality, these guys understand nothing about the game, and their equipment also does not keep up. In other words, they are just paper tigers. And, since the best reward from the beginner arrival mission is the bag with 10 copper coins, even after paying 1 coin for the fee, he would still come out ahead. However, he decides to ask why he would give money to the paladin, who in turn gets nervous and shouts that it is because he is stronger than him. So, he thinks the MC had better delete his account and start over. But Linji tightly grabs the paladin's arm, and he gets confused because he cannot use his strength. The MC comments that reinforced grip is a starting talent in which finger strength is increased, making it harder to release the opponent's weapon, in addition to resistance to disarmament. Balai wants to know what the hell this reinforced grip is, and whether, by any chance, it is not that useless talent that no one chooses, which only serves to hold a weapon. The MC makes it clear that it is useless for the paladin, but that for him, from the warrior class, it is the strongest talent. That said, with a completely intimidating presence, he squeezes the paladin's hand with all his strength, forcing him to let go of his sword. Then, while crying in pain, he wants to know how the MC managed to disarm him with his bare hands. Lin Jie reflects that it may look like trash, but it can be used in very interesting ways, since it allows him to block normal attacks with his own hands, and this effect increases according to strength. So, if a person's strength is higher than the opponent's, they can even counterattack with a disarm. So, since he managed to disarm the paladin just now, it means that this level 2 guy has less strength than a newly created character, and that, from the looks of it, he has not put even a single point into strength. He is literally an idiot who does not know how to play. But what the paladin does not know is that, in future evolutions, this reinforced grip is one of the warrior's strongest talents, since Titan's grip, its evolution, allows someone to wield giant two-handed swords with only one hand. But that only happens if the person chooses this talent from the beginning. At that moment, the guards appear, and Balai shouts that the MC is screwed since causing trouble in a safe zone results in an immediate execution penalty. Then, he swears by the Holy Light that the MC was the one who attacked him first. Lin Jie has in mind that the guards of the beginner village are strong enough to eliminate a level 1 or 2 player with a single strike. So, he admits to the guards that he is the cause of the commotion. The paladin is surprised that the MC admitted his guilt and immediately asks the guards to punish him. However, Lin Ji explains that what he did was self-defense. This makes the guards go after the paladin right away, and he cannot believe the reversal of the situation and shouts, wanting to know what the MC means by self-defense. Then, extremely desperate, he shouts for the guards to wait, because he is a VIP of the game who spent more than 100,000. Lin Jie makes it clear that whoever starts a fight in a safe zone is considered guilty by the NPCs, and the other side, even if they hit back, is not punished, but rewarded instead. The guards teach the paladin a lesson, and then toss 1 copper coin to the MC. Since Balai was forced to pay a compensation fee, Lin Jie picks up the coin and, laughing, says that he accepts the paladin's apology. Then, he looks at the other players around him and asks whether, by any chance, they dare to drop a few more coins or if they will simply get out of the way. They get nervous, but in order not to risk ending up like the paladin, they decide to let the MC pass. Lin Ji goes over to the old man to talk to him and receive the reward, and, as he sits beside him, he comments that it has been a while since the two of them last saw each other. Outlet wants to know how the young adventurer knows him, since the game only opened today. Lin Jie answers that they have known each other for years, but, to be more exact, for at least 5 years. The old man comments that the boy must be trying to make a joke. However, he makes it clear that this does not matter, and since he came there by following the mission, the boy can receive the reward. So, he is to choose between 10 copper coins, 3 units of basic health potion, or a refined iron sword, which is an exclusive warrior weapon. The players around them comment that any idiot would choose the money, since a broke player would sell those coins for a fortune on the black market. But Lin Ji chooses option number 4, because he has in mind that this should only be discovered years later. The old man is surprised by the boy's choice, and the players want to know if, by any chance, the MC has gone crazy and where he got the idea that there is a 4th option. Lin Jie comments that the campfire before dawn must go out twice. Outlet, very surprised, wants to know where the boy heard about that. The MC continues, saying that when the black moon sinks into the eternal night, the embers of the forgotten god will return. Then, what is reborn from the ashes is the ember of the ancient god and the beginning of a new era. That said, he says that this was the code the old man gave him long ago, so he wants to know if he still remembers. Since 5 years ago, after Lin Jie completed the hidden mission of protecting Outlet's relatives, while the old man cried with happiness, he commented that he did not know how to thank the MC, since, as he was only an instructor NPC, he had nothing valuable to give. However, he made it clear that if one day the MC needed his help, all he had to do was say the code, and that, even if he no longer recognized him, he would remember that the boy was his savior. Therefore, Outlet comments that the boy must be someone very important to him. With that, the MC is notified that the hidden mission condition has been met. Then, the old man says that he will give him 10 gold coins, 3 units of health potions, the refined iron sword, and the veteran player return reward as a reward. While Lin Jie collects the rewards, he thinks that, in his past life, he was only 1 step away from becoming the strongest, but in the end, he was defeated through unfair means. And, although injustice is the norm in the world he is in, he refuses to accept it. Then, he receives the initial talent stone, a unique account-bound item that grants an initial talent. The players around him can't believe what they are seeing, wondering if what the boy obtained is that selective talent gem, because as far as they know, such an item can only be bound once per account at the beginning and cannot even be bought with real money. The MC reflects that, if he wants to become the strongest in this life, he needs to start with the best. Therefore, he says that for his second talent, he chooses the Sword Oath, because he has in mind that this hidden mission he received is the first step toward changing his fate. Outlet emphasizes that the talent the boy chose was created by the legendary sword saint, Karsi Mel, and the practitioner will be recognized as an oath-bound swordsman, gaining extraordinary swordsmanship abilities, but will only be able to fight using swords for the rest of his life. So, He wants to know if the MC is really sure about this. Lin Jie smiles and replies that he is absolutely certain. That said, he turns around and starts leaving. The players around him want to know if the MC really chose the sword oath, because who is the idiot who chooses a second sword type talent nowadays? At that moment, the old man also comments that the strongest weapon is not the sword, but the person who wields it. Lin Jie says he knows that very well and thanks Outlet for the gift. And, as he walks through the beginner's city again, he reflects that in his past life, he did not obtain his second talent until level 30, but this time, he has had it from the very beginning. So, now that his combat power is immense, he can level up faster and get closer to the throne more easily. In addition, he knows that the advantages obtained through pay-to-win mechanics drop off quickly after level 5, unless the person keeps pouring money in to maintain the lead. However, if a person relies on pure skill to level up, all they truly need is a crude iron sword. In other words, the sword does not have the violent attributes of an axe, does not have the reach of a spear, and is nowhere near as flashy as a staff. However, the players still have not discovered this, since the simple-looking sword is the weapon that requires true skill. So, his original plan was to choose grip amplification at the beginning, get Outlet's crude iron sword, and then go out to hunt monsters and level up. But this time, he chose the old man's hidden reward, the initial talent stone, and since he missed out on obtaining the crude iron sword, he is leaving empty-handed and everything has changed. However, he has in mind that if he makes different choices in this life, the course of history will be completely different. And if history follows a completely different path, he wonders whether the ending will also change. So, he knows he needs to become stronger before meeting the friend who betrayed him. Then, he will completely reverse the ending of his past life. At that moment, while the MC was walking through the center of the city, a vendor announces that he has novice weapons for sale and that they are very cost-effective. One of the players there crouches down and wants to know what kind of trash the vendor is selling. But as soon as he sees what he has, he becomes furious, and while throwing the items on the ground, wants to know what the hell is wrong with the vendor, because it is just a pile of scrap. Lin Jie approaches the things the player threw on the ground, and then firmly grabs a simple piece of wood, which grants one more point in attack. And, while observing it, he thinks that the main attack of a piece of wood is a strike, so the weapon is categorized as a mace, but it also functions as a sword, until he is surprised by something. Meanwhile, the vendor is very frightened, begging the player to please have mercy and let him go, because he is just a non-combat profession player, and buying and selling equipment is his only source of income. However, the player remains furious and throws more of the vendor's things on the ground. In addition, he thinks the vendor should admit that he is a coward who cannot even fight. He even thinks the vendor should go back to playing house, since he is only getting in his way in the game. Until the MC comments that profession players are also players, and that no one is superior to anyone else. Because without the food from cooks, the potions from alchemists, or the weapons from blacksmiths, most combat players would not even be able to get past the city gates. That said, Lin Jie asks the vendor how much the piece of wood he is holding costs. The vendor is surprised and replies that it costs 1 copper coin. Meanwhile, the furious player wants to know who the hell the MC is. He says his name is Lin Ji and that he is from the warrior class. And, while the players around them burst out laughing when they hear that the MC is from the warrior class, Lin Jie tosses the copper coin and says he will buy the piece of wood because he has in mind that everything is fate, since Paladin Balai's compensation was exactly 1 copper coin. However, the player who was arguing with the vendor steps in front of the MC and shouts, saying that he dared to ruin his fun. Then, he wants to know if he did not see that he was doing a good deed. Lin Ji comments that he was not doing a good deed, but trying to intimidate people. The player laughs and comments that, apparently, the MC really does not realize he is being scammed, since the piece of wood he just bought is trash that no one would pick up even if it were lying on the ground. That said, while the vendor sneaks away laughing, the player says that the merchant is nothing but a scammer. Then, he emphasizes that he would feel dirty even stepping on trash like that, but thinks it serves the MC right for being tricked. However, Lin Jie has in mind that every blacksmith shop in the starting village has several pieces of wood, and that no one wants them even when they are free. But uninformed newbies buy them for 1 copper, thinking it is a bargain. In this case, it was a classic scam when the game era was launched. But he knows he is not a newbie, but the immortal war emperor, who wielded 1,000 divine artifacts. And his intuition is never wrong, since the piece of wood he bought has both sword and mace attributes. So, normal classification systems do not have overlaps like this, unless this is an unidentified divine artifact. And even if he cannot identify it at the moment, he can still use it as a sword. Therefore, he equips the piece of wood and has his base attack increased, reaching 2 to 5 damage. With this, he currently has 5 points in strength, 5 in endurance, 3 in agility, 1 in intelligence, 1 in spirit, and 3 in willpower. A few minutes later, an energy heads toward the novice starting city. Then, all the players present there receive a system notification informing them that the world mission, Defense Against the Terror Demons, has been activated. So everyone needs to defend the gates of Mel City from the terror demons and protect the city's guardian crystal. The MC has in mind that Mel City is a strategic point on the front lines of the continent in the game era, and one of the areas most affected by the plague calamity. And this caused level 2, high-attack terror demons, to appear infinitely outside the city's north gate. And 1 year after Era's open beta, Mel City disappeared from the map forever. In this case, it was probably destroyed by this army of terror demons. The players get excited and comment that they need to go to the north gate, because the experience they will gain by eliminating the demons will be enormous. But as soon as the MC tries to head toward the north gate, the game guards ask him to stop and warn him that, although the situation is urgent, they do not want new players to throw their lives away at the north gate. So, they want the MC to go to the other 3 gates and eliminate low-level monsters to level up first. Lin Ji comments that he does not need that and asks the guards to let him pass. One of the guards makes it clear that once the player leaves the city gates, he will no longer have novice protection. The MC replies that he intends to find some worthy opponents, even if they are higher level. That said, he advances to the north gate and then asks them to open the gate. With this, Lin Jie receives a notification that he has performed an act of courage and had his reputation increased by another 100 points in Mel City. Because of this, his reputation reached the friendly level. After passing through the north gate, the MC reflects that the game era has a set of hidden rules that encourage players to challenge their limits. So, if an NPC believes that a player is attempting a high difficulty challenge, that person's affinity will increase, unlocking hidden missions. Therefore, one of the guards calls out to the MC and says that since he insists on fighting a difficult battle, he wants to know if he can ask him for a favor. With this, the system notifies him that Lin Jie will be entering the side mission, the captain's request. Then, the MC reflects that it is exactly as he expected, since he activated the captain's request. So, the system is giving him a mission meant for level 3 or higher, while he is still only level 1. The captain says that 3 of his subordinates are trapped in the camp of Griffin the Chanter, the leader of the terror demons. However, he needs the MC to recover their bodies so they can have a proper funeral. Lin Jie has in mind that challenging himself above his own level can yield extra rewards, and this can even change the future of Mel City. Then he comments to Captain Lance that he does not need a funeral, because he knows that, to fully complete this dungeon, Griffin the Chanter, the novice killer, must be defeated by a player whose level is far below the dungeon's required level. So, before that, he knows he needs to keep his level as low as possible, relying on his skills and understanding of the boss mechanics in order to face a divine-level boss even while being level 1. The captain is intrigued by something and asks how the boy knows his name. Lin Jie makes it clear that he will personally bring the captain's subordinates back from Griffin the Chanter's clutches and also save Mel City from him. So, he expects the captain to prepare a celebration. The captain in turn says no, and that this is impossible, because unless a miracle happens, his subordinates are destined to be eliminated in the camp. So, he wants the MC to just do his part and wait for Griffin to leave. Lin Jie asks the captain to rest easy and makes it clear that he is the miracle he spoke of, since he has in mind that he truly has nothing but himself. But in this life, he will use his own hands to tilt the scales of fate in his favor. Therefore, 1 hour later, the MC arrives near the camp and notices that there is already a river of blood at the entrance of the starting village. After all, the smell he is sensing could not be anything else. Then he reflects that the game era has extremely high difficulty. The difficulty design is filled with the developer's malice toward the players. But even so, the high rewards it brings still make players from all over the world desperately compete for them. Lin Jie approaches a group gathered around a campfire and hears that they have no support in the party and that they are also missing a tank and need experienced players. The MC thinks that, for ordinary players, the ideal strategy is to form a party until one of the players recognizes the MC and immediately wants to know if he is not the idiot who was scammed earlier by the merchant. Then he laughs and asks if he is still holding that precious piece of wood. Lin Jie does not care at all and thinks that they are always as boring as ever, until another player calls him a novice warrior and asks if, by any chance, he is planning to farm monsters alone. A mage laughs and comments that, looking at the MC's trash equipment, it is obvious he really is a newbie, and that, when he dies and returns to the city, he will definitely kneel and beg for a party. Lin Jie takes a deep breath and thinks that, although forming a party reduces the risks, it also reduces the profits, and that killing a monster alone can yield up to 5 times more profit than doing it in a party. However, while slapping one of the players in the face, he continues thinking that, when someone has enough strength, forming a party actually brings negative returns. The player falls to the ground, sitting down, and immediately shouts, wanting to know what got into the MC's head. Lin Jie, in turn, thinks that the seemingly strong knight has an unexpectedly fragile body, and, if he is not mistaken, he chose Flame of Retribution as his initial talent, burning in sacred flames all over his body, and even looking very strong at first glance. But, while the player tries to cover it up, saying that his foot just slipped, Lin Jie knows that his strength is reduced by 2 points, and his body becomes as fragile as paper, which is equivalent to voluntarily giving up all of the knight's abilities to charge into battle. Therefore, the MC comments to the player that he is a phantom fire knight who only hides behind the team, being a complete coward. However, while they are arguing, a creature slowly approaches. But as soon as the creature gets a little closer, the system alerts that the knight class player has been noticed by a demon. Then, he runs away, and, while doing so, comments to the MC that the demon that just appeared will send him back to the city. Lin Jie comments that, apparently, the player deliberately attracted the creature's attention and then pulled the monster's aggro to make it attack him. So, he thinks that, in the end, the knight is not an idiot like Paladin Balai, since he at least has a few neurons. That said, he charges toward the demon, thinking that eliminating a level 2 creature is not enough to make him level up, and that he can even continue the mission and warm up along the way. The players, seeing the MC charging toward the demon, want to know why he is not trying to run away. Lin Jie keeps advancing, observing the creature carefully, until he manages to see the trajectory of the sword strike. Therefore, the MC manages to make a perfect dodge, and then thinks that a warrior only becomes stronger by getting closer to death. So, a person can only become the immortal god of war by placing himself in dangerous situations, constantly challenging danger. Then, Lin Jie firmly grips his piece of wood and launches an attack on the demon, causing a critical hit. However, the MC is notified by the system that the demon has become enraged and that its attack power has increased by another 50%. The knight, from a distance, shouts to warn to the MC that the demon is about to unleash a charge strike. So, charging at the creature at that moment is simply seeking his own elimination. Lin Jie dodges the attack and thinks that the current intensity is not enough because he needs to get closer. Then, he advances and lands a direct attack, once again causing a critical hit. The demon begins to suffer from the damage caused to its throat, but the MC does not stop advancing and starts launching several attacks, one after another, until he lands a downward strike on the demon's head. With this, the system informs him that Lin Jie has eliminated a demon warrior alone and gained 100 experience points and 5 copper coins. The MC has in mind that constantly surpassing his own limits is the correct way to play Era. The players are surprised by what the boy did and quickly want to know if he really eliminated a demon simply with a piece of wood. The knight comments that he thinks it could only have been luck, because all the hits were critical. Otherwise, there is no explanation until another player calls out to the MC and comments that what he did was quite interesting and that he must be a closed beta player of Era because he knows this kind of operation and it cannot be trained without hundreds of hours. Then, he wants to know if the MC would like to form a party with him, especially because he needs an expert by his side. Lin Jie crouches down to pick up the drop left by the demon and replies that he is not interested in being part of a party. The player comments that, judging by the direction the MC was heading, he wants to know if, by any chance, he intends to challenge Griffin, the chanter. Because, if he looks at the mission description, he will see that a group of at least 5 people is required. That said, he says that his team has already gathered 4 people, and all that is missing is for him to accept. So, he will send a party invitation if he wants to join. Then, the player makes it clear that they will split the profits 50-50. Lin Jie comments that 5 people is only the recommended number to challenge Griffin, and that it is not a mandatory requirement. Upon hearing this, the player is surprised, wanting to know if the MC is planning to solo the mission by himself, because in this type of group dungeon, relying only on the mechanical skill of a single person will not work. So, he wants the MC to listen carefully to what he is about to say. In this case, the reward for Griffin's first kill includes a special title and legacy equipment, and at the moment, there are no fewer than 20 teams across the entire server eyeing this dungeon, and his team is the one with the best chance. So the MC is already very lucky that they are willing to form a party with him. But another player comments that Griffin's second phase will summon some elite monsters. So, without a tank in the party, they will not be able to withstand it in any way, and will then be eliminated in a single wave. Lin Ji comments that they only need a tank, and since he is from the warrior class, it would not make a difference. The leader of the party wags his finger and says that the MC misunderstood. Then, he says that they really like the MC a lot, and felt that his strength is completely worthy of their elite squad. In addition, it definitely was not because they were missing a tank that they invited him to the party. Lin Ji reflects that they only want to find someone to serve as cannon fodder to draw the boss's attention. The player wants to know what the MC's decision will be. He, in turn, takes a deep breath and ends up accepting the invitation to join their party. However, Lin Jie has in mind that dungeon boss battles have their difficulty and rewards adjusted according to the number of participants. So, if he enters with a full party of 5 people, the boss will enter full combat mode and will definitely drop exclusive rewards when defeated. After all, once the hidden mission is completed, Griffin will be permanently removed and his rewards will become impossible to obtain. With this in mind, the MC reflects that, this time in his life, if he wants to reach the top and become the strongest, this reward is the most important link for his evolution in the early game. Therefore, he concludes that he needs to seize this one and only chance to obtain the reward and take everything all at once. A few minutes later, after defeating some demons, the MC arrives at the entrance of Griffin's dungeon. The party leader calls Lin Jie an idiot and emphasizes that he needs to save his strength before entering the dungeon. The mage wants to know if the MC, by any chance, does not know how difficult it is to get potions at the beginning of the game. Another player comments that someone did the math, and that the MC needs to eliminate 100 monsters just to get 2 copper coins, not to mention dropping a piece of green equipment. And that, aside from the pay-to-win gift packs, the number of players who manage to get green equipment on the first day of the server can be counted on the fingers of one hand. However, Lin Jie notices the energy from the piece of wood going toward one of the demon's swords. With that, he is notified that the piece of wood is looking for a host, until the knight tells the MC to stop staring at meaningless things because players cannot use monster weapons, and that this is called an unlootable drop. That said, he points out that if it were that easy to pick up and sell monster weapons, prices on the first day of the game would have already increased 100 times. But the MC does not care at all, bends down, picks up one of the weapons, and wonders why the piece of wood wants to fuse with the monster's equipment. Until something happens, and the system announces that the branch of the world tree will be fusing with the weapon. After the piece of wood merges with the weapon the MC had taken from one of the monsters, he obtains the Terror Demon's curved saber, which adds a bleeding effect on critical hits, as well as increasing attack by more than 10 points. and the user's strength by 1 more point. Linjie reflects on the branch of the world tree because he remembers seeing it at an auction 3 years ago, and that its appearance changes depending on the location and the bearer, but it always takes the form of a piece of wood. And the incredible ability of this artifact is that it can wrap around any object and turn it into a sword. But to be more precise, it is actually a divine artifact that functions as a sword hilt. So, in the end, he knows that this artifact was auctioned for 100 million yuan. Besides, he really did not expect it to be this. However, he knows that at the beginning of the game, players only have trash white level equipment or even empty hands. But even the lowest level monsters carry green equipment. So, the performance of the players and the enemies is simply not on the same level. With this in mind, Linjie equips the demon's curved saber and concludes that if he uses the branch of the world tree to take weapons from the monster's hands, he thinks he can replace his weapons at no cost at all. Now, the MC has a base attack of 11 to 15 with the demon's curved saber, in addition to the increase of 1 more point in the strength attribute. After entering the dungeon, they immediately come across a chaotic scene of intense fighting. Captain Lance's subordinates are fighting tirelessly against Griffin. The party leader quickly tells the MC not to try to help the guards, because at the moment, the battle against the boss is happening in a cutscene. Because of this, the MC will only be able to interfere in the fight once the scene ends. That said, he points out that, in a few seconds, the 3 guards will be smashed to pieces by the boss's hammer. Then Griffin will enter a recovery period, and his aggression and damage will decrease. But while he asks the MC to wait until he calls everyone to advance together, Linjie apologizes and makes it clear that he has no interest in watching a supposed cutscene. So, the MC shouts, telling the guards to give up the fight and return, because Captain Lance is waiting for them to come home safely. The party leader and the other players are surprised by what the MC just did. The guards are also the same way, but they decide to listen to what the warrior said. With that, Linjie walks toward the boss and says that his fighting style is to start a war directly, since he knows that a person can forcibly interfere with cutscenes, but the price for a player to skip the scene is something surreal. The player wearing a hat, very surprised, wants to know if the MC is some kind of idiot, since he is pulling the boss's aggro onto himself. The party leader tells everyone to stay away from the aggro zone and let the MC be eliminated for his insolence. Meanwhile, as he charges toward Griffin, he reflects that this happens because the enemy releases greater hostility toward the character who enters the battlefield first, and that this character is usually a tank-type warrior who draws aggro. However, he knows that this time, he is not just being reckless, since there is a reason why he needs to do this. Because since the world line has changed, the direction of the mission can also change. In this life, he is the butterfly disturbing the world line and changing fate. Linjie tries to block the boss's attack, but as a huge explosion occurs from the impact, the party leader comments to the others that they tricked several pieces of cannon fodder into testing the boss's movements. So, at the moment, they just need to wait for the boss to massacre the idiot warrior and enter the first recovery state. Then they will charge straight in and take the rewards for the first clear. One of the players calls his partner and comments that, according to the system, the party rewards are divided equally. So he thinks that, even so, the MC will take a share of their experience and rewards. The party leader laughs and makes it clear that he will not give the boy that chance. So, while Linjie fights Griffin, he receives a system notification informing him that Rex has kicked him out of the party. Then, the MC needs to jump to block one of the boss's attacks. And, after putting some distance between them, he reflects that it is exactly as he had thought. The party he was in was tricking beginners into being eliminated there in order to reduce the difficulty of the boss raid, especially because he knows they believe that Griffin would be difficult even for a party of 5 people, making it impossible for a level 1 beginner player to defeat him. However, they calculated wrong, because he is not a beginner. So Linjie charges forward with a sinister aura and shouts, saying that he is the warrior reborn from hell. The boss is surprised by the MC's charge and is struck head-on. The party leader, extremely surprised, wants to know if he heard wrong, because he had the impression that he heard a sonic boom that sounded like the air being torn apart. Linjie continues attacking the boss and shouting, telling him to fight. Then, he prepares another attack and, afterward, as he delivers it, asks his sword to become even sharper, since Sword Oath is active, which causes attack power to increase when the player is holding a sword. Griffin's health is reduced by half after taking the attack, which makes the players go crazy, commenting that the MC is managing to trade blows easily with the boss. At that moment, Griffin begins releasing energy, and the system announces that the boss is entering Phase 2. With that, the powerful creature wastes no time and immediately charges at the MC with everything it has, while he, in turn, waits for the attack to approach and thinks that, by putting himself in the most dangerous situation, he can surpass his own limits. The players start shouting, wanting to know if the boy is an idiot, since he seems willing to try to stop a charged attack from a level 5 boss. After the attack collides, a huge explosion occurs. Griffin, amid the dust, continues charging forward, but the MC manages to block the attack and even comments that, to the players there, what he is doing may be something inconceivable, choosing the warrior class, which everyone considers to have no future. But they simply do not understand, and do not want to understand either, because not everyone in the world is born with the power of choice, since he remembers that, 5 years ago, before the game launched in his past life, the virtual reality headset seller had said that what he had informed him of was only the price of the peripherals, and the game's classes are priced according to the popularity of the class, because rich people can choose Tier 1 DPS classes, and those without money can only choose low-level supports or cannon fodder classes, especially because the seller also said that he had heard that at launch, the warrior would be free for a limited time, making it the most suitable class for people who wanted to farm gold and make money in the game. So, after that day, the MC knew that, as a commoner, at that moment, he had discovered a terrifying fact. Firmly grasping the path to victory was, in truth, giving up all other opportunities. The party leader, extremely surprised to see that the MC blocked the boss's attack, comments that there is no way he, being only level 1, could do what he just did. However, Linji reflects that using the lowest cost, combined with the greatest intensity of effort and the most dangerous training environment, paves the strongest path, one exclusive to a commoner like him. Then, he activates his grip amplification skill, and in this way, he can hold the sword horizontally and use it as a shield. While channeling his power, he thinks that he will firmly grasp this chance at rebirth and firmly grasp the sword in his hand, because he blindly trusts it, just as he implicitly trusts himself. So, after forcing the boss forward, he is notified that Griffin has exposed a weakness. Lin Ji charges forward, thinking that he gave up all other opportunities, and what remains before his eyes will be overflowing with nothing but opportunities. Because even if someone is as strong as a god, it does not matter, since even a god will die in his presence. Lin Ji continues advancing, as does Griffin, but the MC, with his full power, cuts the boss in half, and, immediately afterward, the system announces that he has successfully eliminated the demon Griffin. However, Lin Ji, completely exhausted, falls to his knees on the ground. Then, he reflects that, with his current attributes, trying to withstand the boss's heavy attacks is still a bit exaggerated. But fortunately, warriors have an advantage when it comes to health points, and, when he gets up, he realizes that he still has a sliver of health points left, but it was enough to defeat the creature and gain a bonus of more than 500% in experience points. With that, he manages to advance to level 2. Now, Lin Jie, the returnee, has received an increase in all his attributes. The party leader, watching the MC, wants to know if he saw it wrong, because it looked like Griffin was finished before the second phase even ended. At that moment, Lin Jie is informed by the system that the temporary mission has been completed. In this way, he is congratulated for becoming the first player in the Divine Realm to eliminate Griffin. With that, his reputation in the city of Mel increases by more than 200 points. And, because Griffin was eliminated by a player without a class promotion, the MC unlocked the achievement, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Then, Griffin and his forces of terror demons will permanently disappear from the world of Era. As a result, peace will be restored to the city of Mel. Then, the boss is completely removed from the game. The MC's former party members become frustrated and comment that the MC must have exploited some bug to win. The party leader calls the other 3 players and orders them to pick up all the loot on the ground, because since they entered together, even without fighting, they still received a share of the drops. However, as soon as the knight tries to pick up the coin on the ground, he strains so hard and comments that he cannot pick it up. And immediately afterward, the system informs him that he does not have the right to loot the item on the ground. The knight continues straining hard to pick up the coin, wanting to know why the hell he cannot pick it up. The party leader comments that Griffin was eliminated by Lin Ji completely on his own, and since he kicked him out of the party moments earlier, he fears that they will not be able to pick up anything. Then, the leader becomes desperate and shouts, saying that the drops left by Griffin have nothing to do with them. At that moment, a golden bell appears, releasing a powerful energy, and the system informs him that it is a legacy artifact, which, when used, emits a strong buzzing sound and grants a protective effect, capable of blocking one heavy attack. And that, when the golden bell breaks, it sends the attacker flying backward and is limited to 1 use per day. Lin Jie realizes that the boss's exclusive drop is surprisingly small, but he knows that he does not care about that and quickly decides to collect everything. With that, all the drops on the ground go toward the MC, including the coin the knight was trying to pick up. While Lin Jie gathers all his drops, the players want to know if he is really going to monopolize everything by himself. However, the party leader tells the knight to stay calm and comments that it does not matter even if the boy looted everything. After all, according to Era's looting mechanics, players drop all items acquired in the last 24 hours when they are eliminated, which means that if they rush over and eliminate him, all of Griffin's rewards will still be theirs. The knight emphasizes to the party leader that the MC managed to eliminate Griffin completely on his own, so he thinks his strength is absolutely terrifying. One of the players in the party, while activating his eagle eye skill, wants to know what the knight is so afraid of because the boy is severely injured, and to be more precise, he only has 3% of his health remaining. That said, he points out that, with just a light scratch from any damage skill, the MC will be eliminated. So, the party leader calls out to his partners and tells everyone to activate PvP mode because they will make sure that Lin Ji, who entered this dungeon alive, does not leave it breathing. After collecting everything, the MC realizes that just eliminating one boss already yields 100 copper coins, not to mention the enormous amount of alchemy materials. And when he opens the auction house panel in the system, he sees that the current market price for 1 copper coin is 12,000 yuan. So, just the pouch he collected is already worth 1,200,000 yuan, until Rex appears, congratulating the MC and saying that he has certainly proven that he has some skills. Lin Jie looks back and makes it clear that he betrayed their partnership and kicked him out of the party, so he thinks it is already too late for him to apologize. Rex waves his finger and says no, because from what he remembers, they only did nothing because they believed in the MC's strength. Because of that, he really managed to defeat Griffin alone on 5-player difficulty. That said, he comments that they deserve at least part of the credit for having done that. At that moment, Lin Jie feels something in his body and is notified by the system that he has suffered a fatal wound. Then, while the system continues informing him that his maximum health points have been temporarily reduced by 90% and all his attributes have been reduced by half until he returns to a safe zone, Rex says that everyone there has already figured out the MC, and that, where they are, he will meet his end. So the boy should remember well that he was dealing with the infamous villains of the Rex gang. After all, the group's principles are simple. They eliminate monsters and players, as well as cooperate and betray. At that moment, the player with the bow points at the MC and then launches his powerful attack, which passes right by the MC's head with full force. And the MC immediately realizes that it is a hunter skill, Eagle Eye, because he knows that this skill massively increases accuracy, making it a practically guaranteed hit in open areas. But from the looks of it, the hunter missed the shot on purpose. So, he wants to know what the players are planning. Rex replies that it is very simple because he not only wants all of Griffin's loot, but also the piece of wood and the clothes. So, he wants the boy to take everything off and hand it over immediately. That said, he also wants the MC to beg for mercy while handing over everything he asked for. Then, they will try to spare his life. However, he makes it clear that he will also want the MC to leave Sinner's Hill with his butt exposed, letting everyone see him completely humiliated. After saying that, Rex starts laughing and wants to know if the boy thought he could reach the heavens just because he got lucky and hit the boss's weak point mechanic. Lin Jie laughs, points his sword at the players, and emphasizes that since Rex put things that way, it is obvious that he will have to refuse, because he knows they are nothing more than stones on his path to becoming stronger. Besides, he will step over them without thinking twice and continue moving forward. While Rex and the other players are paying attention to what the MC is saying, he also emphasizes that he will not even care when or where they appear beneath his feet. So, he wants Rex's group to charge at him and try to eliminate him if they have the courage, because that kind of thing is exactly what he wants at the moment. The mage wants to know if the boy has gone crazy for thinking that. However, Rex does not want any more nonsense and orders the hunter to shoot. He, in turn, quickly fires his powerful arrow. Lin Jie takes the golden bell he received as a reward and activates it. In this way, he manages to block the powerful attack made by the hunter. But a strong explosion occurs because of the impact. As the dust settles, Rex does not like what he saw and comments that the boy used the legacy artifact dropped by Griffin. The knight wants to know what the hell that golden bell does, and if, by any chance, it grants some kind of invincibility. After the dust settles, Lin Jie replies that it is obvious it is not invincibility, because the golden bell buys him 1 second of breathing room. The knight, intrigued, wants to know what the hell 1 second is good for and what the difference is between being eliminated now and dying later. Lin Jie says it is because upgrading a skill takes exactly 1 second. That said, he emphasizes that, in this way, he will be able to crush the 3 bastards. Then, the MC uses a free skill point to learn an exclusive warrior skill. It is Death Breath, which, when a warrior takes damage, can be activated to restore a small amount of current HP. But if he is in a near-death state or surrounded by enemies, it will be forcibly activated to restore a massive amount of health points. Then, after having his HP recovered, Lin Jie reflects that this skill can even exceed the warrior's maximum HP limit. The hunter, seeing that the boy recovered and even increased his health points, is completely shocked and immediately wants to know how the hell he did that. Lin Jie has a sinister expression and asks if the players want to see the power coming from hell. The mage points at the MC and shouts, telling his partners not to be intimidated, especially because the MC's sword is still stuck in the ground. However, Lin Jie charges forward with everything he has, without hesitation. This leaves Rex very worried about the outcome. The MC lands a tremendous punch right in the middle of the hunter's face, and a loud sound echoes throughout the entire place because of the impact. The other players are surprised to see that the boy is very fast. Rex, seeing his friend lying unconscious on the ground, wants to know if he was really defeated by just a single punch. Lin Jie, with the amplification skill activated, looks at his hand, since he knows that now, when he is not using a weapon, he will gain an enhancement to unarmed combat. At that moment, Rex calls out to the mage and tells him to use Ice Explosion to apply freezing to the boy. The player quickly does so and incapacitates the MC from moving. Then, the knight takes advantage of the chance and charges forward with everything he has. But Lin Jie manages to dodge at the last second, and the knight, with his strike, ends up breaking the ice that was trapping the MC. So Lin Jie clenches his fist tightly and counterattacks with a precise punch to the knight. The mage, very impressed, comments that what he is seeing makes no sense at all, because his ice explosion had restricted the boy's movements. Lin Jie explains that, as long as the strength attribute is high enough, a person can use brute force to break free from restrictions. So, an ice spell of the level the mage cast is simply child's play. The mage, very frightened, comments that the MC's attributes were reduced by half due to his severe injuries. So, he wants to know how his strength attribute can still be high enough, but he ends up reflecting that this is not right, because looking at the boy's battle aura surrounding his body, it does not seem like his attributes have been drastically reduced. So, he turns around, shouts to the archer, and asks him to use Eagle Eye to check the attributes again. However, Linji quickly approaches the mage, grabs his hand, and says that there will be no need for the check. Then, with an overwhelming presence, he makes it clear that he had already sent the hunter back to respawn with a single punch moments earlier. The mage begins to feel his hand going numb because of the MC's grip and even so, keeps calling out to the hunter. But, seeing that he does not respond, he looks directly at the MC and accuses him of cheating. Linjie is very surprised to be called a hacker. Then, he begins to remember when he was betrayed by his friend, and how, at that very moment, he had also accused him of cheating with some kind of hack. Back then, Biley had made it clear that everything the MC said would be useless, because he had lost. So, after remembering this, Lin Jie says that only those who abandon everything they trust would choose that path of no return he witnessed. And because of that, he swears that he would absolutely never fall to the level of having to cheat to play. That said, while tightening his grip even more around the mage's fist, he makes it clear that scum like them only accuse others of cheating when they cannot win with their own skills. The mage, feeling a lot of pain, starts screaming, saying that he admits defeat and that the MC is someone very strong, but he wants him not to eliminate him and says that he will even leave Rex's villain group immediately. Linji comments that it is too late for that. Then, he activates Heavy Strike and hurls the mage with full force against the wall of a house. The impact is so strong that the player opens a huge hole in the wall, until Rex approaches the MC and says that he personally just threw away the last shred of advantage because he knows that the boy is from the warrior class and that he knows exactly how he used his class advantage to accomplish something so unbelievable. That said, Rex takes out his daggers and comments that they, the warrior class, can unleash surprising power even in unfavorable situations, especially when surrounded by a large number of enemies. So, Lin Jie is notified by the system that the warrior trait Last Stand drastically increases attributes when surrounded. However, the surrounded state requires being surrounded by at least 3 enemies to activate. With that, Rex comments that, as he said, the MC threw away his last chance at an advantage because he just eliminated one of his partners. So, now that he is the only one left, the effect of Last Stand cannot be activated. Therefore, the boy's little tricks end there. Lin Jie picks up his weapon from the ground, agrees with the player, but emphasizes that he will send him back to the city spawn cleanly and with a single sword strike. Rex prepares for the confrontation and, while releasing a terrifying dark aura, comments that, from the looks of it, the MC still has not understood the current situation because, as a professional assassin, he belongs to a class completely focused on PvP and enhanced for one-on-one combat. With that said, the confrontation between the two begins. Lin Jie, while blocking the assassin's attack, reflects that his opponent's class has the class trait of striking weak points. So, each assassin's strike applies 1 layer of debuff. Then, the most dangerous strike of all is a blow to the head, which applies blindness, causing the opponent to miss every attack. Meanwhile, an attack on the arm applies the disarm debuff. A strike to the torso applies the bleeding debuff, and finally, a strike to the legs applies the crippled debuff. Therefore, he concludes that once a person is hit in one of these parts, they will quickly be overwhelmed by multiple debuffs. Rex tries at all costs to hit the MC, and while doing so, shouts that his reflexes are not bad at all, since he is keeping up with his speed even while wielding a large and clumsy sword. Then, after Lin Jie dodges another attack, the assassin makes it clear that, since close combat is his specialty, once an assassin even grazes him, even the slightest touch will drown the MC in a mountain of debuffs. With that said, he prepares his next attack and shouts that, for the MC, this is a useless fight, because soon he will be kneeling, begging for a quick elimination. However, Lin Jie grips his sword firmly and then counterattacks the assassin, but he manages to dodge at the last second. But when he looks back, he notices the damage left on the wall because of the MC's attack. Then, he comments that even with the boy's attributes reduced by half, his destructive power is still impressive, and that his strength advantage at the start of the game really is not something to be underestimated. But he thinks that does not matter, because in a battle of attrition, the MC is destined to lose. He, in turn, with a gaze overflowing with power, wants to know who said anything about a battle of attrition. Therefore, Lin Jie charges forward with everything, telling the assassin to regret it while staring at the respawn crystal. Rex is surprised by the MC's sudden charge and the power surrounding him, and, a few seconds later, he is taken back to the city by the return crystal. Completely confused, he wonders if he really returned to the crystal. Then, he is informed by the system that he was eliminated by the warrior Lin Jie, and due to the death penalty, his level dropped from 3 to level 2, and all of his attributes decreased. At that moment, some players around the crystal stone start laughing at the assassin's face. And then, more and more players start laughing. Rex gets nervous and shouts, wanting to know why everyone is watching him and laughing at his face. Then he is informed by the system about the loot rule of the online game. Players drop all items looted in the last 24 hours when they are eliminated. And while the players who had been in his group before continue laughing and saying that, apparently, 24 hours definitely had not passed yet for the assassin's items, he becomes completely embarrassed when he notices that he is without his clothes and items. After that, he starts shouting and cursing the MC for making him go through such humiliation in public. Meanwhile, Lin Jie is observing the items dropped by the player and thinking that the strike he delivered sent Rex's body back. But apparently, his clothes and equipment stayed behind. At that moment, the knight from the villains group wakes up in a lot of pain and thinks that it is a good thing he was afraid of pain and put all his points into defense, or the attack he took earlier would have sent him back. Then, when he realizes that the MC is staring at him, he grabs his sword and, while starting to tremble with fear, asks him not to come closer and to stay back, or he will cut him. Lin Jie simply walks past the knight, asking him to take Rex's clothes back. But before leaving, he turns around and, with an overwhelming and intimidating pressure, wants the knight to tell Rex that if he finds them again, he will hunt them down until their levels return to 0. The knight replies that he understands, but starts trembling even more with fear, and, afterward, feels something strange inside his body, puts his hand over his mouth, falls to the ground, and vomits a little blood. He looks at the MC and wonders what kind of overwhelming power that was that he felt, because it was almost a pressure that could not be measured by attributes, comparable even to staring death itself in the face. And it was like an emperor of war returning from hell. A few seconds later, Lin Jie is informed by the system that he resisted malicious PvP. Because of that, he gained a large amount of reputation. Now, his reputation in the city of Mel has reached the follower level, and he has also achieved legendary status in the city. Then, NPCs will follow him, build a statue in his honor, and he will gain exclusive story privileges. The MC reflects that being stabbed in the back by teammates was bad luck, but gaining so much reputation makes it worth it. So, for now, he will return to the city to restock for the next adventure. A few hours later, Lin Jie arrives at the city entrance and is greeted by several guards who welcome him. He is surprised, wanting to know what the hell is going on. As he passes by the guards, they shout, asking the MC to accept the highest honors of the city of Mel. After that, they call him the miraculous Lord of the Dawn Blade. With this, Lin Jie is congratulated by the system because he obtained the legacy title of the Dawn Blade. Some players around want to know what is up with the NPCs, who are bowing to a player. Others want to know if this title the MC gained is something special. A female player is intrigued, wondering if this status is something unlocked with Platinum VIP status. But another player replies that it does not seem like it, because he thinks no one would get Platinum VIP on a Trash Warrior class that nobody plays. Meanwhile, the MC reflects on the title he gained, because from what he remembers, he heard about it in a dungeon during his past life. Then, he remembers that 3 years ago, the world was wrapped in the long era of eternal night. Monsters roamed the land, and the flames of civilization were on the verge of going out. Then, a legendary human warrior appeared. His giant sword looked simple, yet it could summon the first light of dawn in the darkness, becoming a symbol that tore through the night. After that, he led an allied force of all races in a final battle during the darkest hour before dawn, and, in the end, brought light back to the world. The silhouette of the nameless warrior stood on the cliff, wrapped in the golden light of dawn, while raising the giant sword burning with the glow of daybreak. Since then, the title of the Dawn Blade has been granted to the hero willing to stand up against evil. After remembering this, Lin Jie knows that it is one of the 8 legacy titles most promoted before the game's launch. Each one represents a heroic epic in the history of the world of Era. The developers hinted that these titles were not just lore, but could be hidden achievements or rewards of great honor. But even so, he never heard of anyone who actually managed to obtain one. But luckily, he knows that he has just obtained one of the 8 legacy titles right there, in the starting zone of the city of Mel. So, he knows that this was a rather unexpected reward. A few minutes later, after the MC enters a little deeper into the city, Captain Lance is waiting for him and comments that the entire city is moved to tears by his noble act, and that Mayor Oliver Green hopes to receive him personally. With this, the system informs the MC that the side quest hero of Mel has been unlocked, and that he needs to head to the city council hall. The captain also asks the MC to allow him to personally escort him there. Lin Jie replies that there is no need, because he will go to the council alone, and that the captain and the other guards can remain at their posts. After all, he has in mind that being too conspicuous will attract the attention of malicious players. Then, he knows it is better to keep a low profile. However, in a dark alley, a player sees the MC walking calmly and thinks that he really is a show-off. It is the assassin Rex, who, furious, swears that if he finds Lin Jie in a dark alley, he will stab him in the back. Then the mage from his group calls out to him and comments that maybe they should not mess with the MC anymore. After all the NPCs in the city are treating him with so much respect. Besides, they still need to survive there in the city of Mel. Rex does not like hearing that, and makes it clear that infamy is still fame, and as long as they manage to eliminate the boy, other villain players will admire them. The knight wants to know if, by any chance, his boss has some plan to make him suffer. Rex says that if they were out in the wilderness, he would not have the final say. But since this is a city, he, Evil Rex, has more influence there than anyone else, since there is currently a temporary festival event in Mel. Then a guard appears, informing them that forming groups and drawing weapons is forbidden there. Rex quickly hides his dagger, and, a little embarrassed, tries to explain himself, saying that they are only discussing business, but that they, the NPCs, are being excessively authoritarian. So, he wants to know if people cannot simply enjoy the game. The guard turns around and leaves, saying that they are closely watching malicious players. And since Rex already has a record, he should stay away from trouble while he is in the city. The assassin gets nervous, thinking that even Mel has its dark side because of the MC. Meanwhile, he ends up arriving at City Hall, in Mayor Oliver Green's office area. And as soon as the MC opens the door, the mayor stands up when he sees who is entering and calls the MC the Lord of the Dawn Blade. Then, the mayor quickly runs over to the boy and, while holding his hand, comments that, thanks to him, the thing that had hung over the heads of the city's residents for years, Griffin, their nightmare, was completely exterminated. In addition, the MC's noble act not only saved the city, but also saved countless lives that could have been sacrificed, being a feat worthy of the history books. However, Lin Jie does not show much excitement at the mayor's flattery. After all, from what he remembers from his past life memories, Mayor Oliver Green was a stern NPC who never smiled. But perhaps that was because he was exhausted from dealing with the constant offensive of the terror demons. But, observing him now, he thinks that somehow he looks much healthier and that his personality has also changed. So he comments that it was only what he should have done. The mayor goes to a curtain in the corner of the room and says that, to remember the MC's bravery and kindness, he will make a formal proposal on behalf of all the residents. With that said, he calls Lin Jie over to the window and says that they will raise a heroic statue for him in the central square, and that he will suggest that it be made of solid gold. Then, he hopes that many people will travel to the city of Mel to witness the legend he will become. After that, he emphasizes that everyone should feel the light of the Dawn Blade's spirit. Lin Jie comments that he appreciates the sentiment, but feels that this is only an empty title. After all, players passing through the city will not have their lives changed just because a statue suddenly appeared in a starting city. So, he wants to know if he can make a suggestion instead. The mayor wants to know if the Lord of the Dawn Blade, by any chance, has a better suggestion. After all, it can be gold, a noble title, or anything else he considers compatible with the great feat he accomplished. The MC says that now that Griffin's threat has disappeared, the military funds and resources that the city of Mel had prepared to fight him should be used in a more practical way to benefit everyone. With that said, he comments that he believes it would be better to use those funds for two things. The first is a permanent tax reduction for the city's trading posts to lower the growth costs of new players. After that, it is to let the city become a friendly and vibrant starting point for adventurers. The second thing is to strengthen the city's security and patrol forces to ensure that threats like this never return, so that residents and travelers can live in peace. The mayor is surprised by the MC's suggestion. Then, he reflects that he has seen countless adventurers seeking fame and power, but he has never seen someone who cared so much about all the other players. Therefore, he emphasizes that the boy's magnanimity and vision made him feel as much shame as admiration, but that it will be exactly as he suggested. He will issue the order immediately. With this, a few minutes later, the players receive an announcement informing them that, from that day on, the tax rate for all transactions in the city of Mel, including between players and NPCs, and between players, will be permanently reduced by 50%. After all, this is to welcome and assist all new adventurers on their journey. The players and NPCs go wild upon hearing this, and soon want to know who was responsible for such an act of charity. The mayor, seeing how the residents and adventurers reacted, calls out to the MC and comments that he brought the true light of dawn to the city, and that he is deeply impressed by his character. With that said, he says that, as a symbol of his eternal personal gratitude, he wants the MC to accept one more gift. Then, he says that the key belongs to a 2-story house on the outskirts of the city, which has been empty for a long time, and that it may be simple, but the place is peaceful, and from there, it is possible to see the windmill fields. So, the bronze key and the property deed permanently belong to the MC from that moment on, and, in his name, he invites him to make the city of Mel his true home. With this, the MC is quite surprised. After all, he obtained the first private player property in Era. Because of that, his legendary status in the city was recorded in history. Lin Jehuri reflects on land ownership in the game because he knows that this used to be an unattainable privilege. After all, he has in mind that in this game, controlled by a freely evolving AI and whose realism is almost comparable to that of a second world, land scarcity is the fundamental rule. Because it is not like other games where the rich can buy entire commercial streets with a single check, or even buy the whole game to make every NPC serve them. In the vast world of Era, every piece of land has an owner. It either belongs to a system city or to a native tribe, or it is a lair occupied by an invincible monster. But what players can possess is only a temporary right of use, such as renting a stall or workshop, and even for guilds, an astronomical amount of resources and reputation is needed just to apply for a limited territory, and they can still lose control at any time if they fail to defend it or if the system claims it back. So, he knows that having a private space that belongs entirely to himself is an unimaginably huge advantage in the early stages of the game. Whether for storing supplies, researching skills, or future functional expansions, this is incredibly important. Therefore, the MC takes the copper key, thanks Mayor Oliver Green, and says that he really liked the gift he received. The mayor comments that the MC's willingness to reside there in the city is much more inspiring than a golden statue in the central square. With this, Lin Jie is informed by the system that teleportation within the city of Mel has been unlocked. Instant durability repair for weapons and equipment within the city has also been unlocked. Then, he is also informed that remote access to the auction house has been unlocked. And, due to the MC's noble character and incomparable contribution, all of his purchases there in the city will permanently receive an additional hidden discount of 15%. Finally, the system wishes the MC that Dawn will always favor him. After that, he goes back to walking through the city, thinking that since the mayor just gave him a discount, it is the perfect time to go to the market to buy provisions. Then, he is surprised when he is informed by the system that an opponent used pickpocket with a successful agility check. Lin Jie notices that 100 copper coins were just stolen from him. A girl runs off laughing, thinking that she succeeded. but the MC quickly grabs her by the clothes and shouts, asking her to return what she took. However, with incredible speed, she simply leaves the cloak behind and runs far away. Lin Jie gets nervous when he sees that he was robbed in broad daylight and that, apparently, he thinks the mayor needs to invest more in the city's security. Then, he runs at full speed after the person who robbed him, until, a few minutes later, in a dark alley, the girl stops running to catch her breath. Lin Ji goes up to her and comments that there is no way out ahead. Karen, an elite rogue from the Shadow Street group, laughs and comments that the line the MC just said should be said by them. With this, several other rogue class players appear behind the MC. He, in turn, clenches his own hand tightly and comments that he almost forgot that the city of Mel has a hidden dark side. Then, he calls the girl Karen and says that she is the manager of Shadow Street. She laughs and says that he knows quite a lot. Then, she wants to know if, by any chance, he is a closed beta player. Lin Jie has in mind that in his past life, he was robbed by the NPCs of Shadow Street more than once, and that he is even far too familiar with this kind of procedure. Karen equips her Shadow Sword and emphasizes that, to put it simply, someone paid for the MC's life, so he has to be eliminated. Lin Jie says that, so far, he has only offended two people, the Paladin Bailey and the Assassin Rex from the villains group. With that said, he wants to know which one of them is the idiot who wants him dead. Karen points out that he should know very well, because she thinks she does not need to say it. He comments that it is just as he imagined, especially because that guy no longer dares to face him directly, and that now, he only dares to hire assassins to take revenge. Karen makes it clear that she is only an NPC responsible for receiving the money and doing the job, so it has nothing to do with the grudges between players. With that said, she orders her lackeys to eliminate the MC. Quickly, they all rush forward, but Lin Ji equips his sword, and a powerful explosion happens inside the alley. After the dust settles, the MC managed to defeat several of them at once. Karen gets excited when she sees this, and, while clapping, comments that the MC is actually quite skilled. He, in turn, wants to know if she still wants more. Karen jumps down from the box and comments that robbing someone like him is an unprofitable business, and that it might not even cover the medical expenses of the useless ones he defeated. Therefore, she tells the rest who are left to retreat. After all, even together, she thinks they would not be a match for the Lord of the Dawn Blade. Then she takes a deep breath and comments that NPCs also need to calculate costs when doing business. With that said, while passing by the MC, she says that this is how she will respond to the player Rex. Karen of Shadow Street did her best, but the target was difficult and she had to give up halfway. Then, she says goodbye to the boy of the Dawnblade and warns him that the next time he goes to Shadow Street to drink, he should just say her name. Lin Jie looks back and asks Karen to wait. She is intrigued, wanting to know if he is not satisfied even after she spared him. The MC raises his hand and asks her to return the bag of copper coins. Karen laughs and comments that she was planning to be merciful and grant him a way out, but now he actually dares to bargain with the manager of Shadow Street. With that said, she makes it clear that the money he wants back is her reward for sparing his life. Lin Jie says that he earned that money with his own skill, so he thinks she will have to rely on her own skill to take it back. Therefore, he begins to release a powerful energy throughout his entire body. Karen starts to unsheath her sword, commenting that, in the end, the bounty and the money currently with the MC all belong to her. Lin Jie wastes no more time and charges at the manager of Shadow Street. She, in turn, blocks the MC's charge. Then, after applying a little more force, she cuts his sword in half. After that, she says that her sword is the weapon destroyer. Lin Jie looks at what is left of his sword and thinks that something must be wrong. After all, in his memories from his past life, Karen of Shadow Street was only an ordinary black market NPC. She, in turn, points out that since the MC is quite a handsome guy, she wants to know if he would like her to lend him some money so he can go buy a new weapon at the blacksmith. Lin Jie finds all of this strange and wonders how things ended up becoming so dramatic. Then, Lin Jie drops what remains of his sword to the ground and swears that, even if he has to fight barehanded, he will not let her escape. Karen laughs and asks if he is trying to provoke her, because she thinks that is too cliché. With that said, she emphasizes that, since she is in a good mood, she does not mind playing a few rounds with him. So, she shouts, asking her underlings to show the MC Dark Street's welcoming ceremony. Out of nowhere, several people appear and start shouting, cheering for their boss. There are even people on top of the houses, cheering for the manager of Dark Street. And, without further delay, Karen charges at the MC with everything she has, while he dodges the attack, but is startled by her speed. Then, Linjie realizes that he dodged by a very narrow margin. Karen jumps high into the air and prepares a kick, but Linjie manages to block it as well and becomes worried about his opponent's strength. Karen takes some distance, and the MC observes her and concludes that she is indeed very strong. Even so, he thinks he cannot worry about that and charges forward. The two begin exchanging several punches. However, Linjie needs to quickly dodge a powerful kick. Karen comments that he has good reflexes, but she wants to see what he will do next. Then she throws another punch, but this time, Linjie manages to grab her wrist. After that, he starts gathering energy to counterattack. Karen is surprised and thinks that if she takes that hit, she will be in a troublesome situation. So, somehow, she manages to pull her hand back. In doing so, she ends up dodging the MC's powerful punch. She observes the damage his blow caused to the wall and comments that it was quite interesting and that maybe she really will not be able to take him down so soon without drawing her blade. Linjie wants to know if she thinks it is worth continuing the fight, because from this point on, he makes it clear that she will lose far more than she could ever gain. Karen is stunned by what she has just heard from him and then bursts into laughter, saying that he really is an interesting guy. Then, while picking up the bag of copper coins, she asks him to forget what they did, because she is really no longer in the mood. With that said, she throws the bag to the MC and comments that fighting him to the end over a miserable bag of coins would only be a waste of her business time. Then, she turns around, calls for her underlings, and says goodbye to the boy. The MC thinks that this woman is quite strange after all, until he notices something odd and wonders if, by any chance, the bag of coins is heavier than before. And as soon as he opens it to check, he is surprised by what is inside. Then, after taking it in his hand, he realizes that it is some kind of eye and immediately wonders what the hell it could be, until a message arrives from Karen of Dark Street. In the message, she says that she gave him a small welcoming gift and that he does not need to thank her because she hopes for pleasant cooperation in the future. Linjie keeps staring at the thing in his hand and once again wonders what kind of absurd welcoming gift he has received, until the eye cracks and emits a bright light energy, which quickly heads toward the MC's eye. He starts feeling discomfort and falls to his knees on the ground. With that, the system informs him that he has acquired the Eye of Truth artifact, a prosthetic eye of unknown origin, apparently inseparably connected to some ancient order and a mysterious existence. Then, it informs him that the eye was gifted to the MC by Karen, the master of Dark Street, through a special method, and, when used, it grants him the supreme authority to see through illusions and perceive hidden mysteries. Linjie takes a deep breath and reflects that he never imagined he would obtain such an unexpected reward, since it is an item he has never heard of before. Then, he concludes that apparently, Mel City in this life is far more interesting than he remembered. After that, a few minutes later, the MC is walking through the city and wondering if he will be able to find anything good, until a guy shouts announcing that he is selling black stones, 1 copper coin per stack. Linjie is intrigued by the product, since he has in mind that black stones are probably the most abundant basic mineral in the game, and that he cannot even count how many mines were buried by players digging blindly, hoping to find a valuable magic crystal vein. However, he turns away and concludes that this kind of thing is piled up like mountains in players' warehouses. Then, he thinks that even selling them to NPC shops is a waste of space, and at the moment, it is trash that no one wants even for free. Until, out of nowhere, the MC has the Eye of Truth activated. He is intrigued, wondering if such a thing activates automatically, but he ends up noticing something different in one of the black stones, and upon observing it more carefully, he concludes that the one he is seeing is indeed completely different from the rest. So, he picks up the black stone, and after appraising it with the Eye of Truth, he discovers that it is a starlight stone. Then, he becomes happy upon realizing that the Eye of Truth is something so broken because he ended up finding something very good just by taking a random walk. With that in mind, he immediately throws a copper coin to buy the stone and thinks that, either way, he would take this first and study it carefully later. But, just in case, he asks the seller if the stone he picked up is for sale. He answers yes. But then, after taking it in his hand, he comments that the MC really has a good eye for quality. However, he thinks that the boy is a complete sucker, and upon seeing the MC leaving with the black stone in hand, he reflects that he really managed to earn one copper coin with a useless piece of stone. Lin Jie, after putting some distance between them, smiles and crushes the stone. Upon opening his hand, he concludes that it is indeed a perfect starlight stone, since the outer camouflage layer of black stone was flawless. So, he knows that, with a common appraisal skill, there would be no chance at all of seeing through it. Thus, he reflects that it is no wonder it was a pearl covered in dust, hidden among a pile of useless stones. Then he knows that, if he sells this gem directly to an NPC, it will probably be worth more than 100 coppers. But from what he remembers, the starlight stone has a special function, and the powder obtained by dismantling a starlight stone can be used as a special material for alchemy. So, if he wants to maximize the stone's value, he should probably try alchemy, because he has in mind that, in the world of Era, players enjoy immense freedom when choosing life professions, and many even choose to be profession players, represented by tailors, blacksmiths, and jewelers as their main profession. These classes have a low entry barrier and seem like an extension of the real world, providing a perfect change of pace from combat. Consequently, the vast majority of players try one or two of them. However, he knows that there is one life profession that is an exception, and not only is it difficult to learn and expensive to maintain, but the work process itself is full of danger, because a failure in alchemy can cause an explosion that leads to instant death. Then, that is the profession of the alchemist, because any carelessness will be its own curse. Thus, he concludes that he first needs to check the current prices of alchemical products. Then, he discovers that a medium healing potion costs around 10 copper coins and has a daily usage limit of 1 flask. With that, he reflects that, according to the official crafting recipe, the cost of the materials should be at least 1 copper coin higher than the selling price. So, he knows that, no matter how one looks at it, it is an unprofitable business. In addition, not to mention that alchemists need to deal with a failure rate above 60%, making the real cost almost double the official selling price. But, because of the unexpected profit from the incident with Karen, and because he has lived in the world of Era for 5 years, he knows some hidden potion recipes. So, Lin Jie goes to the general store merchant and thinks that, normally, even if he knew the recipe, he would not be able to craft it, because the most crucial ingredient is starlight stone powder. But the unexpected profit from the incident with Karen gave him the chance to obtain a gigantic profit. At that moment, some players notice the MC buying more things again, but one of them asks the other to forget it, because they will just close their eyes and follow his example, since, if he can make money, they can too. With that said, he emphasizes that the MC is the guy with the title of Dawnblade, and that he must have mastered the economic system during the closed beta, especially because he saw him buy a black stone at the last stall. So, he bought one too. The other player comments that the guy at the stall convinced him to buy an entire set. The stall owner, in turn, upon hearing the news, picks up a black stone and wonders if, by any chance, he was tricked by selling one of the stones. After that, Lin Jie goes to a calmer place, sits on a bench in the square, and opens the system. Then, he reflects that he has already bought enough medium crystal flasks and cheap low-level verdant grass leaves. Then, he thinks this should be enough to craft 100 batches of medium healing potions. Next, he crafts the perfect starlight stone powder. The players around him become curious, wanting to know what the hell the MC just crushed with his hand. The player beside him comments that it must have been the black stone he bought moments before. Then, he thinks the boy is trying to produce high-quality products, and that the black stone he bought can only be the key material. With that said, he suggests to his friend that they should do the same thing the boy did, and, as soon as both of them crush the artifact, they are notified that they have acquired black stone powder. Meanwhile, Lin Jie prepares his potion and reflects that, normally, grass leaf essence can only be turned into a weak basic herbal juice. Then, he pours the grass leaf essence into the medium crystal flask and, after that, adds the starlight stone powder to the grass leaf essence. With that, Lin-Ji reflects that, when catalyzed by starlight stone powder, the potency of the basic herbal juice is activated several times over. However, as he gets up, he knows it is still not finished. One of the players comments that the boy seems to be heading toward the fountain. Then, he wants to know if he is going to perform some high-level ritual. The other player comments that it must be that because from what he knows, crafting high-quality products requires a high-level ritual. Then, a premium environment like a fountain is perfect for a ritual site. Lin Jie takes the potion flask and puts a bit of fountain water inside it. Then, he shakes it a little to mix the liquid. With that, he manages to make a medium healing potion. The MC is happy to see that it worked because apparently the quality is identical to the ones sold in shops, and the potency is also the same. The players, upon seeing this, think that Dawnblade, after all, is a seller of counterfeit medicine. A few minutes later, Lin Ji crafts several medium healing potions until he completes 100 potions. With that, he acquires a huge amount of alchemy mastery, reaching the apprentice rank. The MC, a little exhausted, thinks that, apparently, knowledge from the past can really be converted into wealth, until several players appear, wanting to know how the MC got so many potions and whether, by any chance, he is selling them. 1 hour later, after selling everything he made, Lin Ji tells the player in front of him that his medium healing potions have sold out. Then, the MC reflects that, as long as they are 1 copper cheaper than the shop price, they sell out instantly. Because he even sold some flasks at a premium price. So, calculating roughly, his original 100 coppers turned into 1,000 coppers in just 1 hour. Thus, he concludes that Griffin's reward has increased tenfold at this moment. Meanwhile, the players from before are talking, saying that the MC's recipe must be secret information discovered during the closed beta. Then, he thinks that, if this were revealed, it would be a gigantic bug capable of shaking Era's entire economic system. The other player comments that both of them need to get rich before the developers fix this bug. Then, he takes a small flask, mixes the black powder and the grass leaves in the flask, and then shakes it well. Then, he adds a bit of tap water and comments that alchemy is as easy as breathing. However, he ends up getting quite scared when he sees a strange reaction coming out of the flask, and the system warns that the player has synthesized a flask of toxic sewage. But the player swears that the recipe was right, because he clearly saw the MC's steps. With that said, he makes it clear that it really is a healing potion, but only the color is wrong. His friend wants to know if the player dares to drink the potion, until an explosion happens where the players were, which even catches the MC's attention. The people around them start wanting to know what happened and whether, by any chance, someone got hurt. Lin Jie takes a deep breath and thinks that crafting randomly without understanding the recipe invites the curse of alchemy, so he can only wish the players better luck next time. Then, he reflects that he needs to log out and deal with his newly acquired wealth. So, after converting the money, he decides to log out. Upon returning to the real world, Lin Jie takes off the virtual reality headset, takes a deep breath, and thinks that, with the exchange rate of 1 copper coin to 10,000 yuan, he exchanged 50 copper coins on the trading site before logging out, and it does not take long for him to receive a notification that the 5 million he exchanged has been deposited. Lin Jie smiles and thinks that was pretty fast, until he hears a noise. A guy appears at the door of the house, warning that it is time to pay that month's rent. The MC's mother wants to know if they did not only have to pay at the end of the month, since it is still the beginning. The guy comments that he could have waited until the end of the month, but he just lost 1 million playing the game era. With that said, he emphasizes that if he does not squeeze part of that out of them, he will be very irritated. The MC's mother apologizes and says that she does not have that money at the moment, so she wants to know if he could give her a few more days to get it together. The blonde guy does not like hearing that very much. Then, one of his thugs forcibly grabs the MC's sister. Her mother tries to help her, but is stopped by the landlord, who in turn comments that the woman's daughter is very beautiful and at a great age, and that maybe he can even make some money with her. until he looks up and asks about the woman's precious son, because from what he knows, he must be holed up playing games, nothing more than a complete failure. And while they continue threatening the MC's family, he appears and asks if the debt amount is 1 million. And after transferring the money, the landlord starts laughing and wanting to know if the boy is, by any chance, trying to act tough. But upon seeing that the money was indeed transferred to his account, he becomes completely surprised. Lin Ji wants to know if it is enough. Both the MC's sister and mother run over to him, wanting to know if he robbed a bank and where he got so much money. While the blonde guy's thugs try to count how many zeros there are in the final balance, the landlord keeps staring at the MC and trying to understand where he got so much cash. But after being informed by his thugs that the amount is correct, he grabs Lin Ji by the shirt, calls him a brat, and says that he is just a filthy nerd addicted to games. But he wants to know how the hell he managed to get 1 million. The MC looks back and simply asks his mother and sister to go to the kitchen. The blonde guy keeps wanting to know how the boy got so much money, because he would love to hear his explanation. Lin Jie replies that he is just a filthy gamer, so naturally playing games is the only way he has to make money. The blonde guy becomes furious upon hearing that, curses the MC, and says that he just lost 1 million in the game, and that he somehow earned 1 million. So he grabs a knife and says that the million he transferred does not count toward his debt, and that it is only compensation for his losses in the game. Lin Jie wants to know if the guy is trying to extort him now. Then he quickly throws out his hand, disarms the landlord, and firmly holds his wrist, while the landlord, in turn, becomes completely surprised and frightened upon realizing that the boy is very fast and strong. The MC comments that it is a shame for the guy, because he is good at more than just gaming. With that said, he slams the blonde guy to the ground with everything he has and puts him in an arm lock. The landlord starts crying in pain and shouts, wanting to know if the boy is really the same failed gamer named Lin Ji. He replies that yes, in the flesh. But the blonde guy's thugs immediately shout, asking him to let go of their boss. But the blonde guy, as his arm is twisted a little more, shouts, asking his thugs not to move. Then, while trembling in pain, he looks at the MC, calls him bro, and comments that they can just talk, and that, if he is not careful, he might break his arm. Lin Jie becomes furious at being called bro and immediately wants to know who the hell is bro with whom. The blonde guy becomes even more terrified, thinking that the boy's aura is truly frightening and that it is almost as if he were a demon returned from hell. Lin Jie squeezes the guy's arm a little more and asks if he still wants to extort him. The blonde guy starts shouting, answering that no, and that everything was just a misunderstanding, because he is only trying to survive, and because of that, he thinks the MC does not need to make things so ugly, especially because, since he already paid the debt, there is naturally no more reason to cause trouble. With that said, he looks at his thugs and asks if they do not agree. They immediately answer yes. Lin Jie becomes serious and asks all of them to leave his house immediately. The blonde guy apologizes for the trouble and leaves together with his thugs, until the MC's sister and mother go over to him, and, very furious, his sister shouts, saying that those guys are incredibly rude and swears that, if she sees them again, she will have her brother beat all of them until they turn to dust. From afar, the three promise that they will never dare to do this again, and, while everyone runs away from the place, the MC's sister wants to know if he is not going to give an explanation. Lin Jie does not understand and asks explain what. His sister, suspicious, wants to know how a secret millionaire suddenly appeared in her house. The MC starts sweating cold because of the situation he has just created, wondering how he is going to bluff his way out of this without making them worried. His sister keeps pressing him, asking him to explain exactly how a millionaire ended up hiding in their house. Lin Jie, in turn, thinks that being reborn is truly wonderful because his sister is still alive and healthy. After all, he remembers that, in his past life, because of his father's death and his sister's serious illness, the family fell into massive debt, so he had no choice but to carry the heavy burden of the household. He tried in all kinds of ways to find a job, but the employers always told him to come back another day, saying that if a suitable opportunity came up, they would contact him again. So back then, the employment situation was terrible, and, as a commoner, he could barely find any work opportunities until one day he heard a guy calling the people around him to play the game era. Lin Jie heard that it was an endless unknown world with countless riches waiting for every player to explore, and that he could also make a lot of money by playing. Because of that, his original reason for becoming a player was to make money. And inside the game, a certain leader of a gold farming group was looking for someone who was not afraid of dying, so he wanted to know if the boy would accept joining their group. Then, he said that the payment for one round was 2 copper coins. Lin Ji accepted right away without thinking twice. From then on, every battle was an encounter with death itself, but as long as he survived, he could make money. The group leader, seeing the MC's persistence, told him back then that his life really was harsh. After all, somehow, he managed to survive until the end every single time, and if he did not know him, he would think he was using some kind of cheat. The MC, after hearing that back then, remained silent and said nothing. Seeing how hard he worked, the group leader gave him an extra copper coin. Then, he asked the MC to look after their group in the future. Because of that, Lin Jie, relying on years of experience dealing with the Reaper, made his combat techniques more and more refined. After that, even if the entire team was wiped out, he would be the only one to survive until the end, even defeating the boss alone. Afterward, as his skills matured, a new ideal was born, because he wanted to become the strongest player, and only a player with pure skill could do that. After all, on the road to becoming the strongest, he could also make money in the process and protect those most important to him. So, he knew he needed to become the strongest. Later, he met a brother-in-arms and friend with the same ideals, the Sword Saint, Bailey Changcheng. Both of them promised to use their respective strengths to become the strongest in their classes. So, they agreed that they would always fight to see who truly was the strongest. And, as Lin Jie evolved rapidly, the players around him always talked about him and said that they had even had the honor of seeing his plays, being able to tell others that they had met the immortal god of war. Then, the MC's visibility skyrocketed, and his family's financial crisis gradually improved, until one day, when the manager of the final battle told Lin Jie that in the next battle, he would need to lose. That day, the MC became furious and slammed the table with a tremendous punch. Then, feeling extremely indignant, he wanted to know why the hell he had to lose, because he clearly had the strength to fight for the throne of the strongest, as well as the dream of becoming the strongest, standing at the top of the game era. Then, he made it clear that if he won the final match, he would earn 100 million in prize money and cure his sister's illness once and for all. So, completely furious, he wanted to know why the hell he should lose with so much at stake. The battle manager informed him that the final showdown of Era was, in truth, a game controlled by money, and since the boy came from a commoner background, he absolutely could not stand in the way of the rising star created by capital. Therefore, he would need to lose. That said, he revealed that the MC's opponent would be his war brother, Bailey Changcheng. Lin Ji turned around, saying that Bailey would not dare betray the promise they had made, because he knew the reason why he had become a player. So, with the thought that he needed to become the strongest, he risked everything to defeat Bailey. After all, born as a commoner, he dreamed of using his strength to change his fate against all odds, especially because he knew that as long as he kept walking down this path, it would be the right thing to do. However, before the MC left, the manager made it clear that even if he did not surrender, Capital would find a way to make him surrender. But Lin Ji did not care at all and left without saying another word. And while picking up his phone to see who was calling, he kept in mind that a guy like Bailey, who came from an extraordinary background, no matter how many times he fell, would always have the chance to stand up again. But as a commoner, he knew that if he fell even once, he would be beyond redemption. When he answered the call, he wanted to know what his mother needed. The MC's mother, desperate, said that the hospital had told her the equipment had malfunctioned for no reason, and his sister's condition had suddenly worsened. And, while Lin Jie let his phone fall to the ground, his mother also said that a man in a black suit at the hospital had told her some things. The MC cried a lot for his sister back then, and, after remembering all of that, his sister wanted to know why he was crying. While wiping away his tears, The MC smiled and said that her older brother was just happy to see her doing well. She gets a little confused and comments that he has been very strange lately, since he was crying one second and laughing the next. Then, she wants to know if he really managed to earn 1 million by playing. Lin Jie, smiling widely, answers yes, and explains that it was because he opened a mysterious box, then sold a piece of equipment for an astronomical price, and from that day on, they would be able to live a good life. After hearing that, the MC's sister runs off, throws him back with all her strength, and shouts that she is also going to buy a virtual reality headset to play the game. After that, Lin Jie reflected that each person could have many reasons to become a player, some for glory, some for dreams, and others just to escape reality. But his reason for becoming a player was that he wanted to become the strongest. So, as someone from the bottom of society, his life was already hard enough and naturally suited for trading his life for money, like a monster, always managing to survive in the most difficult situations. But people did not know that behind every miracle of survival, there was a reason why he needed to keep living, which was to become the strongest, become the last one standing, and protect the most important person. So, that was and still is his reason for becoming a player. After that, the next day, while walking through the city, Lin Jie thinks that, in this life, if he wants to become the strongest, he needs to buy some things in advance. So, he needs to go to the official licensed peripherals store of the game era. And, as soon as he arrives, he keeps in mind that in his past life, only from the middle to the late stages of the game did he manage to save enough to buy equipment 2 levels below this, while his friend who betrayed him had used top-tier equipment like the Supreme Lightning from the very beginning. When he enters the store, the salesman recognizes the MC and immediately wants to know what happened, or if perhaps the entry-level model he sold him is not working. Lin Jie replies that he wants to exchange it for a Supreme Lightning. The salesman cannot believe the request and emphasizes to the MC that what he wants is meant for high-level professional players. That said, he comments that it is good for young people to have dreams, but he should not get carried away, because he could carry bricks for 10 years and still not be able to buy even one part of the machine he asked for. At that moment, a guy walks in front of the MC, asks for a Supreme Lightning, and says he will pay everything in cash. The salesman changes his expression right away and starts flattering the guy, saying that he truly has a sharp eye because what he asked for is the only one in stock in the city, reserved only for high-level players like him. Lin Jie becomes intrigued and thinks that, judging by the voice of the guy who just appeared, he might even be an old acquaintance, until one of the guys who is with the person who asked for the Supreme Lightning says that he was screwed over by a complete idiot before, a guy named Lin Ji. Quickly, the guy beside the MC turns around, saying that if his equipment had not been so trash, he would have made that Lin Ji pay for what he did, until he realizes something and becomes terribly frightened. Then, after realizing that the guy beside him is the warrior Lin Jie, he wants to know why the hell he is standing in the corner. The MC says that enemies really are destined to meet. Then, he wants to know what he said to him last time and whether, by any chance, he wants another lesson. Rex comments that, from the looks of it, that Karen failed to eliminate him inside the game. However, he wants to know if, by any chance, the MC knows what kind of place they are in. Then, he says that they are in reality, and that he, Rex, the villain, has more authority there than anyone else. Until one of his friends says that he thinks their boss had said something similar inside the game, in the starting city. Rex makes it clear that the MC was cheating in the game, and they were destroyed because of that, but that he cannot cheat in real life. Besides, it is 3 against 1. The salesman steps in and asks them not to fight inside the store, because running a shop is not easy. Then, he asks Lin Ji not to be impulsive, because the guy in front of him is young Master Rex, so he thinks he just needs to kneel down quickly and apologize. After all, he is afraid that he will break something and not be able to pay for the damages. The MC takes a deep breath and makes it clear that games are just games. So, he thinks Rex should not bring those emotions into reality, because originally, he was planning to let them escape. Quickly, the 3 of them pick up some weapons and Rex shouts that he will recover all the dignity he lost in the game. The other guys, furious, want to know if the MC has any idea how long it will take them to level up and how he dared to make them lose levels. Rex wastes no more time and charges forward. However, something happens to the MC's eye, and as he sees Rex and the others coming at him with everything they have, he realizes that time is slowing down. Then, he reflects that 5 years of hellish combat in Era sharpened and trained his brain, improving his reaction speed, and his muscle memory kept up with it, because his reactions are so fast during combat that it creates an effect in his eyes similar to time slowing down. So, as he dodges Rex's attack, he concludes that everything that evolved inside the game is the same in reality. Rex is scared when he sees how the boy dodged his attack and immediately wants to know if he can cheat in real life too. Lin Jie takes the chance, charges forward, and lands a tremendous punch directly on Rex. Rex, in turn, feels the powerful blow, and as he falls to his knees on the ground, Lin Jie makes it clear that there is no way to cheat in real life. That said, he comments that, to save time, he thinks the other two could attack him together. They get scared, walk toward the store exit, and shout, telling their boss that they will meet another time. After that, Lin Jie goes to the salesman, hands over the card, and asks for the Supreme Lightning, because he will pay in cash. While putting the card into the machine, the salesman wants to know if the boy made a lot of money carrying bricks. Lin Jie tells him that the card balance is enough. The MC leaves the store with the equipment, and the salesman thanks the boy and asks him to come back anytime. But while Lin Jie walks down the street, he notices a guy watching him, and, after observing him more carefully, he wants to know if, when he was in the store, he did not want to go at him along with the other guys. After all, he keeps in mind that the guy in front of him is the knight from inside the game. He, in turn, does not know what to say and then starts trembling until he shouts, saying that he wants to become strong. The MC becomes intrigued by the request. Then, the guy goes up to Lin Jie and says that his name is Hawk, and that he is the Knight of Retribution inside the game era. That said, he calls Lin Jie Dawnblade and asks him to accept him as a disciple. However, the MC turns around and leaves, saying that he has no plans for that. But Hawk runs up to him, grabs him, and says that since the day he saw him as a war emperor returning from hell, he realized something very important. So, he says that the MC is a truly powerful person. Hawk also says that he chose the talent Fire of Retribution because he was afraid. Afraid of standing on the front line, afraid of getting hurt, and afraid of real responsibilities. Then, he explains that he used flashy effects to hide the cowardice in his bones, because he knows he is a complete failure. So, he wants to become truly strong, to become a powerful existence like the MC. And, because of that, he wants him to accept him as a disciple. Lin Jie apologizes, and once again says that he has no plans to accept a disciple at the moment. But he reflects that, from the looks of it, that idiot Hawk still does not know about a certain event. However, he says that maybe he will have that plan in the future. This makes the guy happy when he hears it. While walking away, the MC thinks that the moment a person recognizes their own weaknesses, they are already becoming stronger. So, before leaving, he stops walking and tells Hawk that Era is currently updating to version 1.01, and that when that happens, he will keep an eye on him and they will see from there. He becomes even more excited and swears that he will use the time to prove his worth and that he will be worthy of becoming the disciple of the player with the title Dawnblade. With that, Lin Jie continues walking back home, thinking that, at this exact moment, the gears of fate have completely changed compared to his past life, moving in a subtle direction that no one could have predicted. After that, the MC arrives at his house and immediately puts on the device he just bought. As soon as he enters the game, he appears in an open place with a single house nearby. He observes and reflects that he had not been there since the mayor gave him the key, and that, apparently, after the game update, his default login location was set to his own house. And, upon opening the door and entering, the MC is welcomed home and informed that the version update unlocked the housing renovation function for him. Now, he can freely renovate the house, as well as the surrounding land within a radius of 500 meters, which has been designated as territory belonging to him. And the higher his reputation in the world of Era, the more land rights he will be able to acquire in the future. Lin Jie, upon learning this, thinks that he never would have imagined there would be such a function hidden in the game, since he did not have a house in his past life, so there was no way for him to know about it. But upon looking around, he realizes that the house is completely empty, and there is no way to live there. So he opens the system and then the market window and buys some things for the new house. But he keeps thinking that the mayor gave him an empty house, just waiting for him to spend all his hard-earned money on renovations, since these necessary expenses would be enough to buy a mansion in reality. However, he knows that at least the scenery is truly beautiful, so he thinks the money was not completely wasted, since he will earn more money later. At that moment, Linji hears someone knocking on the door, so he walks over to it and as soon as he opens it, wants to know who it could be. It is Karen, who in turn says good morning to the Dawnblade. Linjie thinks this can only be a bad omen, and, as he tries not to let her in, Karen comments that they are practically old friends and that he could let her enter. But the MC thinks that Karen controls the entire underworld of Mel City and that, because of that, nothing good comes from getting involved with her. After all, in Era, there are many players who love malicious PvP, and, after becoming red-named players, they cannot operate normally in most public areas. But an underworld NPC like Karen will take in these infamous players and provide daily services for them, but clearly for an extra fee. Even so, the players who seek out Karen are never the nice type. After reflecting on this, the manager of Dark Street tells the MC that she has a profitable job for him. Lin Jie makes it clear that this is the first time he has heard of an NPC going directly to someone's door to hand out a mission, but that, even so, he is not the least bit interested. However, Karen does not care at all and, pushing harder, throws the door wide open right in the MC's face and even says that, in Mel City, no one besides him can complete the task she has. Having said that, she sits in the armchair and says that a den of man-eating magical beasts has appeared in the West Wind mountain range, west of the city. Lin Jie is surprised to hear this and asks if something like that really happened. Karen says that thing is strong and that several of her subordinates were devoured by it, so she wants to find someone to take care of it. Lin Ji comments that he knows her subordinates normally only operate near the city, so he wants to know why they would run all the way to the West Wind mountain range just to be eliminated. Karen says that, in her line of work, the rule is to ask fewer questions. Because of that, the MC should just say whether he accepts or not. After all, the reward is 100 copper coins. Lin Ji takes the apple from her hand and makes a counteroffer, in which he will accept if it is for 10 silver coins. She becomes indignant and asks how he dares to ask for such an exorbitant price, since 10 silver coins are equivalent to 10,000 copper coins. The MC sits in his armchair, laughs, and emphasizes that, since it is a mission she personally came to request, he can easily set the price. Karen does not like this at all, and comments that, with that kind of money, she could hire the players in the city to work for her. But Lin Ji points out that, even so, she insisted on coming all the way there to look for him. So, he thinks she definitely has her reasons, but if she does not want to say them, he will say them for her. Karen finds this interesting and asks why he does not go ahead and say what he has to say. The MC has in mind that Karen's treasure vault is located exactly in the West Wind mountain range, being a hidden dungeon, and that, after the game update, that cave was occupied by newly appeared monsters. So, he says that he knows very well that she wants to recover the money, but cannot find the right person to go in there. Having said that, he emphasizes that he is afraid the dirty money she hid there is worth much more than 10 silver coins, or perhaps even more than 100 gold coins, in addition to countless precious collectibles. Karen is surprised by what the boy knows and immediately wants to know how he could know that, since he is just a novice player. Lin Jie reflects that he is someone who was reborn and came back, so there is not a single NPC secret he does not know. After all, in his past life, Karen's treasure vault later became a treasure hunting mission, causing a frenzy across the entire server, and he also participated in it. But clearly this happened after Mel City was destroyed in the early stages of the game. So, at that time, the evil Karen consequently eliminated too many innocent players and ended up being slain by a subjugation group. With that, Karen of Dark Street ended up becoming nothing more than the story of an NPC in the history of Era. Therefore, Linji comments that, at the moment, what he wants to discuss with her is that dirty money. After all, he thinks that if he reports this to the mayor, she, Karen of Dark Street, would not be able to live to see the next version. Karen, in turn, begins trembling with anger and comments that old man would not dare interfere in her affairs. Then, she walks back to the door and, before leaving, makes it clear that she, who loves money as much as she loves her own life, has absolutely no chance of handing over such a huge amount. But the MC comments that, seeing how greedy she is, he can even do what she asked without receiving a single coin in return. This makes her completely happy, wanting to know if he really would not charge. However, in exchange, Lin Jie asks her to abandon her identity as the manager of Dark Street, and he thinks that becoming a villain is sometimes just a matter of a single thought, because reality is like that, and NPCs are the same way. After all, he knows that the first time he saw Karen, he felt she was a little different from the NPC in his memories, since Karen's story was originally just a small side event in the game. But then, one day, Mel City was invaded, and Griffin became the new ruler. Mayor Oliver Green was eliminated, and Karen submitted to the brutal Griffin, since she believed in the evil within human nature and turned that belief into action, allowing the malice in her heart to grow. With that, she became an accomplice to evil, became a villain, became a villainous boss, and, in the end, was eliminated. But the MC knows that in this life, he unexpectedly noticed another unknown side of this NPC, and, upon remembering her saying that, if she had not used a knife, she really would not have been able to bring him down so quickly that day in the dark alley. He knows that she was once also someone who felt happy and excited simply by pure combat. So, he thinks the scales of fate may perhaps tilt a little just because of this small change. Karen, meanwhile, becomes very nervous upon hearing the request to abandon her identity as the manager of Dark Street. Then, she replies that this is impossible, but Lin Ji activates his Eye of Truth and thinks that this skill has the ability to see through NPCs' lies. Upon seeing that the boy used such a skill, Karen calls him a bastard and asks how he dares use the thing she gave him to spy on her life. The MC says that the things inside there are simply too important to Karen of Dark Street, important enough for her to protect them, even if she has to give up everything else. Karen quickly draws her sword, points it at the MC, and shouts that she respects him as a man, but he should not push his luck. Lin Jie begins releasing his power, changes his expression, and makes it clear that the place they are in is his territory. So, he wants Karen to show some respect, because he is the only one who can help her recover her things. Karen, in turn, emphasizes that treasure is the savings of her entire life. If she no longer manages the underworld in the future, it will be enough to start a business in society. But she will agree to the boy's request and entrust this task to him, though he must complete it. After that, a few hours later, Lin Ji walks through a valley, thinking that, in the end, he really ended up accepting Karen's mission for free. Then, he takes a deep breath and thinks that his mind must have gone blank when he agreed, since, moments earlier, the system notified him that he had received a mission from Karen, in which he needed to defeat the mysterious monster hidden in front of the gate of her sanctuary. But, before leaving for the mission, the MC asked Karen to give him a certain thing. She was shocked, wanting to know if he was perhaps asking for money, since moments earlier, he himself had said it would be free, but the MC said that what he wanted was the weapon. This left her even more confused, wanting to know what weapon he wanted. Lin just said it was the level 8 Zodiac Black Dragon weapon, since she had said she intended to compensate him with another weapon for cutting his last one. Karen says she is not good with swords, since she only has blades. But, upon taking one from her inventory, she says it is called Night Spectre. Lin Ji, upon seeing that it was a long blade with a sharp edge and that it could be used with both hands, thought that, for him, it was undoubtedly a sword. But after remembering this, while cutting some thorny vines along the way, he thinks that Karen's blade is much heavier than it looked. Lin Ji continues cutting the vines in his path, and the system informs him that the famous Night Spectre blade has a weapon description, unsheathed, because Karen stubbornly believes that putting a sword in a sheath means compromise. Because of that, she is always in a constant state of readiness to eliminate. The sword's effect is that if the quality of the opponent's weapon is lower than the inherited rank, that weapon will be directly destroyed. But if the quality is equal or higher, the State of Blade Massacre will be applied. With that, the weapon's durability continuously decreases until it becomes impossible to repair. A few minutes later, after Lin Jie finishes clearing the path, he thinks that if it were not for the mark Karen placed to identify the entrance, he might have taken the entire day to find it. In addition, he considers that a certain mysterious monster must have already arrived. And when he looks to the side, he sees a huge creature. However, Lin Jie is intrigued when he realizes it is only a level 1 wild boar. Then, as he prepares for the confrontation, he knows that such a creature in Era is nothing more than a food ingredient, until he is surprised to feel something pass quickly over his head, and then a huge explosion happens right where the wild boar was. Then, intrigued, he wonders why there is more than one creature there, and as soon as the dust settles, the MC sees the level 8 Zodiac Black Dragon. It, in turn, looks at Lin Jie and calls him a foolish human, saying that somehow he became so arrogant that he thought of challenging it. The MC immediately contacts Karen and tells her what just appeared. She, while taking a bath, wants to know if he already found the creature that quickly. Lin Jie comments that she, apparently, simply wanted to send him to his death. After all, a boss of this level that just appeared requires a team of at least 5 people to face it. Karen says that the difficulty of wild bosses increases according to the number of combatants. So, if he cannot solve the problem alone, summoning more weaklings will only increase the chaos. Having said that, she emphasizes that she herself has already faced the Dawnblade, and that his level far surpasses the other foolish 4th and 5th level players. Lin Jie comments that the monsters around the beginner village square do not exceed level 4, and that even that guy, Griffin, his level was only around 5. But for a level 8 black dragon to appear there, some kind of error must have occurred. Karen emphasizes that he defeated Griffin alone before, and that, thanks to his skilled movements, the dragon can be defeated the same way. Lin Jie does not like hearing this, and looking at the enormous creature in front of him, says that there is a full difference of 6 levels. So, he wants to know if there is any skill capable of filling that gap. The dragon calls the MC an intruder and comments that since he has come to its lair, it will mercifully consider 2 choices. In the first, it can simply crush him completely right there, and not even ashes will remain of him. And in the other choice, it would be pleased to accept some new followers to serve it. But the boy must kneel and glorify its great name. Lin Jie makes it clear that he is not interested and that he is only there to warn it, because it seems to be illegally occupying someone else's house. The dragon becomes furious and shouts, wanting to know how a mere insignificant human dare speak in such a way, because the treasures in the vault of its lair are all its own. Lin Jie wipes the drool that the dragon spat onto his face, and thinks that the game era has perfectly incorporated all the stereotypical traits of dragons: arrogance, insolence, and greed. At that moment, the MC is notified that the black dragon has identified him as an attack target. Lin Jie runs away while thinking that, even in his past life, when he defeated a young black dragon of his own level, he was in a full team of 8 people and had already reached level 3. After all, in Era, the attribute difference between level 2 and level 3 practically doubles. And, although he possesses the experience and skill from his past life, the performance of the body he currently has is extremely poor. Then he needs to quickly jump to the side to avoid being caught by the dragon's scorching flames. Lin Jie thinks of Karen and concludes that apparently he has fallen into her trap once again. After that, he puts some distance between himself and the enormous creature and thinks that a black dragon's attack patterns are normally of 4 types: breath, claw strike, bite, and tail strike. So any blow from it is enough to completely crush him at his current level. The creature begins to fly and shouts, wanting to know how a foolish human dares challenge its authority. Lin Jie once again jumps to the side to avoid being hit and continues thinking that every attack movement has a slight preparatory sign before it begins. So, when the dragon unleashes its flame breath, it slightly raises its head to draw in air. For a tail strike, the creature digs its claws into the ground and twists its body. For a bite, the dragon's body quickly pulls back. Then, it opens its mouth and bites forward. But as for the claw attack, it is fan-shaped, since, after the attack, an opening appears that lasts half a second. So, at that moment, after the claw attack, during that half second, he charges straight toward the dragon, thinking that it is the right moment for a counterattack. However, upon delivering the attack, he is notified that he caused 0 damage. The dragon looks at the MC and calls him a damned ant. Then, as it moves to try to bite him, the MC tries to flee, thinking that the creature is going to bite him and that he will not be able to dodge in time. So, he shouts for his golden bell, and at the same time as the dragon's bite surrounds him, the effect of the golden bell is activated. With that, Lin Ji manages to escape by a hair. Meanwhile, the black dragon, confused, wants to know what the hell just happened. Lin Ji gets up from the rubble and thinks that fortunately, he had the golden bell, because he survived by a miracle. But even so, he knows that he cannot pierce the dragon's defenses. So, he wonders how he is going to defeat it. The black dragon, while preparing its flaming breath, comments that, apparently, for some reason, the MC seems unable to use what he used moments earlier anymore. Lin Jie realizes that the creature is going to unleash a draconic breath sweep, a continuous cone-shaped jet of flames, and that, if launched from the front, it is basically impossible to dodge. So, he advances and reflects that, when facing dragons, players generally try to maintain a safe distance. But, after creating distance, the range of the breath becomes greater, making it even more dangerous. So, he knows that the true safe distance is actually 0 distance. Therefore, he jumps onto the dragon. It, in turn, realizes that the human is fast, and that this human player's speed is completely different from what a level 2 should have. Lin Jie lands the attack on the creature's neck, but continues dealing 0 damage. Then, he begins to worry. Meanwhile, the dragon laughs, and says that the human ant can barely pierce its zodiac draconic scales, and that, apparently, it ended up overestimating him for nothing. Then, Lin Ji tries to defend himself from the dragon's claw attack, and Karen, through the transmission, says that she almost forgot to mention one thing, which is that the Night Spectre blade is a little shy around strangers. The MC becomes nervous and shouts, wanting to know why she only told him something so important afterward. Karen laughs and informs him that the blade he is wielding is an inherited weapon with a lot of personality. Users, it does not acknowledge, cannot unleash its true power. Lin Ji wants to know what the conditions are to earn the blade's recognition. However, he barely has time to talk, and, while dodging another attack, Karen says that he needs to prove he is someone who has gone through trials of life and death. Lin Ji jumps and runs to create distance, and thinks that he has seen many bizarre recognition conditions in games. But, when it comes to dealing with death, he is far too good at it. Therefore, the MC turns around and shows the creature his middle finger. It, in turn, becomes furious and prepares its draconic breath again. Then, it fires, and forces the MC to run to avoid being caught. Lin Jie takes advantage of the direction of the blast, and circles around to go straight toward the creature. Then, he reflects that the target is the 3-inch point on the dragon's neck, where the creature's reverse scale is located. With that in mind, he jumps up and tries to land the slash there, but the dragon takes flight at the last second. Then, it calls the MC a naive human and asks if he thought that would be enough to wound it. Lin Jie returns to the ground and thinks that he ended up forgetting that the dragon can also fly. But then, he decides to test the enhanced grip strength on the blade. Karen, seeing this, comments that it did not matter before, but this time it is a draconic breath dive. So, with his current physique and weak equipment, he absolutely will not be able to withstand it. However, Lin Ji looks at the blade and comments that if the sword only recognizes those who do not fear death, then, while wielding such a famous sword, it should worship itself as a god. At that moment, the black dragon prepares its skill, just like the MC. The energy around his body and the sword begins to grow even stronger, and then he shouts that he is the god of war returned from hell. With that, recognition from the inherited weapon is obtained. Now, the famous sword Night Spectre has been acquired. The armor destruction skill has been unlocked, capable of destroying the defensive structure of the target's armor when attacking. Therefore, Lin Jie charges straight toward the dragon with everything he has. Karen, upon seeing what the MC achieved, is completely shocked, wanting to know how he managed to unleash the sword's power in such a short time. Upon being hit by the attack, the dragon wonders if the insignificant human is truly making it feel danger. Then, after seeing that the boy managed to cause a wound on its body, it shouts, calling him a despicable human. Then, it charges straight forward, saying that it will make him die in agony and regret such insolence. Lin Jie grips the sword firmly and thinks that the weapon's skill is perfect for this moment, because fighting the dragon in close combat, if he puts all his strength into a single strike, he thinks he may be able to defeat it. While preparing its draconic breath, the dragon comments that the human, in the end, has finally made a foolish choice, and, upon seeing that the MC still jumped toward it, it makes it clear that now that he is in the air, he has personally thrown away his last chance to dodge the attack. Lin Jie thinks that the creature is absolutely right. After all, the slightest deviation in the jump he made means falling straight into hell. However, carefully observing the dragon's movements, he knows that the balance between life and death rests on those insignificant few milliseconds, and he completely, without reservation, obsessively believes in the sword in his hands. So, he continues charging upward, thinking about his tense hands, the burning breath, and every inch of his flesh and blood boiling. And, as soon as both of them come face to face with each other, Lin Jie tries to withstand the draconic breath with his sword, thinking that he believes these are the only things in this chaotic world to which he can entrust his life. So, he knows that, in this high-risk gamble, besides his victory, there is no other possibility. With that, because the attacks collide, a huge explosion occurs. After the dust settles, Lin Jie manages to cut off the creature's head, and the dragon's body begins to fall. Therefore, the MC receives a system notification informing him that he has defeated the Zodiac Black Dragon. Then, he is notified that because he defeated a higher-level legacy monster, he will gain a 500% experience bonus, resulting in 12,810 experience points. Because of this, he levels up to level 3, then to level 4, until he reaches level 5. So, he gains 15 more free attribute points to distribute, plus 3 skill points and the title of Dragon Slayer. As an effect, it inflicts intimidation on low-ranking dragon-type monsters, reducing their aggression or making them flee. In addition, he is immune to the intimidation effect of high-ranking dragons. The critical hit rate increases when attacking dragons' weak points, and special additional dialogue options will be unlocked with certain NPCs. Lin Jie thinks that, even without deliberately farming monsters, he still leveled up quite a lot. At that moment, Karen calls out to the Lord of the Dawnblade and comments that she knows he can defeat monsters above his level, but eliminating a dragon with a single strike, she wants to know how that is possible. The MC replies that it is not impossible, since, earlier, he used the Eye of Truth to locate the exact position of the Black Dragon's reverse scales. So, as long as he struck at the perfect moment and directly hit the reverse scales, he could trigger a super critical hit combined with the damage bonus from the Night Stalker's Crimson Blade. In addition, the armor-piercing strike pierces through the dragon scales and ignores defense. With that, the damage, amplified by multiple layers, is enough to exceed the Black Dragon's maximum health points. So, it results in the creature's instant elimination. Karen wants to know how he can guarantee that all these low-probability buffs activate at exactly the same time, because if he had missed, he would have been in a very dangerous situation. Lin Jie replies that crossing the gates of hell, that is what he calls skilled gameplay. Having said that, he reflects that, since he has already jumped straight to level 5 and obtained extra skill points, he wonders why not take advantage of this opportunity to evolve. Therefore, he opens the status window and then applies some points, thinking that, for warrior class professions, the highest priority is ensuring high strength, since most two-handed weapons rely on strength to amplify damage. So, he knows it is better to defeat minions with a single strike. Otherwise, efficiency drops significantly. Then, he knows that endurance affects HP and resistance to negative effects. So, there is no need to put too many points into endurance, but he knows it is still necessary to protect himself against the risk of being one-shot by bosses and to consider equipment requirements. However, he reflects that agility is directly related to the feeling of controlling the character. Because for players who rely on precise maneuvers and high skill, agility is even more important than endurance. But he chooses to ignore the remaining attributes since, instead of spreading limited points into weak areas he is not good at, he prefers to maximize his strengths. Then, after distributing the points, he concludes that he has become even stronger. Lin Jie, seeing his skill list, reflects that he has practically not used combat skills since leveling up, so future battles will be even more difficult. Therefore, he cannot rely only on improvisation since he needs to choose some practical skills. With that in mind, he chooses the Berserker skill, which automatically accumulates rage at the cost of gradually losing health points, granting a general increase in speed and damage. But when HP falls below 15%, the rage automatically ends, and the character enters a state of exhaustion. So, he concludes that this skill is also a prerequisite for the Berserker class. Then, for his second skill point, he chooses to further improve his grip strength. In this way, the strength of his arms is enhanced even more, and when he tries to knock the enemy's weapon away with a blade strike, the duration of the enemy's imbalanced state increases significantly. And, against enemies with lower strength than his, he can even rip the weapon out of their hands, treating it as a disarm. When performing unarmed strength checks, the MC's strength is considered doubled. Therefore, for the third skill, Lin Jie chooses throwing, in which, when the MC decides to throw the weapon in his hand, upon hitting the target, it will cause the weapon's original damage. Karen, seeing this, becomes intrigued, wanting to know if he really chose a trash skill based on agility. Lin Jie comments that she is right, looking only at the skill description, and that throwing really does not seem impressive at all. However, he knows that a person needs 10 points of agility to learn throwing. But warriors, who prioritize strength and endurance, rarely meet the requirements for throwing early on, and even if they do, they would not choose it. But from a practical point of view, throwing away one's precious weapon means that if the person fails to recover it, they will be at a huge disadvantage. However, he explains that the throwing skill is in fact a trash skill, but it is not a useless skill. After all, its use should not be interpreted literally. Lin Jie says that in the minds of players, long-range weapons are usually bows, crossbows, and, in future updates, firearms and cannons, and that, because of this stereotype limits the player's imagination, and, in reality, players do not even need long-range weapons. Then, he emphasizes that warriors naturally have strength attributes far superior to those of other classes, which makes them the perfect class to learn the throwing skill. Karen, still intrigued, wants to know if the MC's hands are long-range weapons, since, if they are, this is a possibility they never even considered. Lin Jie says that her answer is close, but still not right, because he chose throwing with confidence because of another ace up his sleeve. Having said that, he says it was because of his grip strength. Karen is stunned to learn this, and comments that it is another trash skill. The MC says that this grip strength, also considered trash, grants a huge hidden bonus to throwing, and, in fact, it is enough to elevate this poorly designed trash skill to divine status all at once, where it becomes grip strength and throwing. Then, while demonstrating, he says that he gave this combo the name Rainbow Piercing, and as the rock where he hit the sword with the throw begins to collapse, he emphasizes that, to reward innovative gameplay, Era allows players to freely name the combo skills they invent. Therefore, the MC makes it clear that a melee warrior also acquires Tier 1 ranged attack capabilities through innovative gameplay. This is precisely his path that differs from the others. Karen comments that it is indeed impressive, because what he believed in was in fact his own judgment, and that it is almost as if he had already foreseen the future. Having said that, she makes it clear that it does not matter how he did it, since he certainly completed the mission and deserves a reward. Then, she says that when they return to the city, she will give him the 10 silver coins promised. But Lin Jie asks her to wait a moment and comments that the agreement they made was not only about 10 silver coins. Karen laughs and says that she has changed her mind, because since he has already earned her approval, she now believes the strength of the Lord of the Dawn Blade is worth 10 silver coins. And, As for the old agreement about no longer serving as the manager of Dark Street, she emphasizes that this is naturally out of the question. She says this and sticks her tongue out at the MC. Linja becomes nervous, asks her to wait a minute, and emphasizes that she is an NPC. So, he wants to know if she can really go back on her word. After all, he has in mind that in his past life, NPCs never pulled absurd tricks like reneging on their own requests. Karen replies that she is from Dark Street, the dark side of Mel City, and that she does whatever she wants. In addition, if he comes back late, she also will not give him his silver coins. Linja, while beginning to walk back, becomes furious and makes it clear that when he sees her, he will want his money and that he will never want to deal with her business again. Then, he thinks that he really cannot work with an NPC who goes back on her word like that, and that, if she ends up becoming a villain in the end, it will be her own fault. However, after walking a little farther forward, the ground beneath him begins to crack, and then the MC ends up falling and arrives at an underground location. The system immediately informs him that the player has entered Dungeon 1 of Karen's treasure vault. He is very surprised to learn that he ended up accidentally finding Karen's treasure vault, since he knows that this is the secret location that players spent an entire season searching for in his past life. However, upon taking a better look around, he realizes there is no shining gold or jewelry, only a pile of toys, dolls, and traces of a child's growth. Then, when he looks at a wall, he sees a photo of Karen from when she was a child, so he becomes intrigued, wondering if it could really be her. But what intrigues him the most is that Karen looked very happy beside Mayor Oliver Green. Therefore, he wonders if the manager of Shadow Street is actually the mayor's daughter, and if her treasure vault, the thing she values most, is her memories. Then an NPC falls unconscious at MC's feet, and from the top of some stacked boxes, Karen appears, commenting that, in the end, the Blade of Dawn ended up learning all her secrets. Lin Ji comments that the mayor's security orders always stop working at the most critical moment, but that, in the end, they were meant to protect her. Karen calls Oliver Green a damned old man, and then, as she jumps down, comments that the mayor believes order alone is the environment a novice player desires. But for players who cannot withstand the law of the jungle, it is better for them to face reality early in the beginner village. Then, with a serious expression, she asks whether MC does not agree with her line of reasoning. Lin Jie says he was about to agree with her, but on the most critical point, he thinks he must oppose it. That said, he emphasizes that even if the world they are in is a world where the strong devour the weak, he wants to know what makes her so certain about who is strong and who is weak. Then, he asks Karen to look at herself and then at him. So, in her opinion, he wants to know who she thinks is stronger. The manager of Shadow Street replies that she actually liked his question, but that the answer will be known soon. However, Lin Jie says he has changed his mind. Then he makes it clear that the mission reward remains the same, and that she must abandon the title of boss of Shadow Street. But she comments that what he is asking for is impossible. MC asks her to accept her own law of the jungle, because if she is standing before him as the defeated one, she must obey his orders. Karen laughs and asks what will happen if he loses, as MC replies that such a possibility does not exist. The sword in his hand is pulled away. Karen takes her weapon back and comments that, as the only player who knows her secret, she also has a reason why she needs to take him down. That said, she begins to release her power and makes it clear that even if he has the strength to eliminate a dragon, without a weapon, he has absolutely no chance of victory. Lin Jie activates his berserker skill and emphasizes that he is very eager to see her true abilities. Then, while releasing his power, he reflects that the Fury state continuously drains health points but increases speed and destructive power, and that he can even perform incredible maneuvers that break limits. However, Karen is not intimidated and charges forward, saying that the boy's new move is actually quite stylish. Lin Ji dodges the first attack, but Karen prepares another one and comments that his new move only looks cool for 3 seconds. MC clenches his fist and then lands a direct punch on the sword. Karen is surprised by the boy's audacity and immediately wants to know if he plans to defeat her weapon using only his bare hands. Lin Ji activates his blade shock skill and hurls Karen forcefully backward, and while MC keeps her sword, she ends up crashing hard into the boxes. After that, she becomes worried upon noticing that, apparently, even the Night Spectre has recognized his strength. Lin Jie, with his terrifying aura, slowly walks toward the manager of Shadow Street, saying that only if she is strong enough will she have the right to create the rules. But until then, he will stand at the top of the world to change those rules she mentioned, which should not exist. Karen equips another sword and makes it clear that it is not over yet, because she still has not lost. Therefore, she stands up, channels her power, and tells MC to come at her. He also prepares himself, but comments that her fighting spirit is truly impressive. But it is a pity that she cannot defeat him, because he is the strongest between the two. Karen does not like hearing that and shouts, telling the boy to stop dictating rules there, because the rule of Shadow Street is the law of the jungle, and nothing can oppose absolute power. Linjie blocks the attack and comments that, for many players, the game era is just a game, and, while dodging another attack, he emphasizes that no one really cares whether an NPC lives or dies. But to him, this is a real and bloody life. Hearing this leaves Karen very surprised, wanting to know what he is trying to imply. Lin Jie replies that he saw an even colder and more desperate reality. Then, he absolutely does not accept her rule of the law of the jungle. Then, he begins to remember some events from his past life, in which he was completing, with other players, the random event of the Goblin Raider group, whose objective was to free the kidnapped elf girl, who, in turn, was completely desperate. At the time, one of the players commented that the rescue mission had been completed and that they had received the reward, but he wanted to know what they were going to do with the NPC, especially because the mission had not mentioned any continuation. The other player wanted to know if they would let the elf run around and end up triggering an alarm when she returned to the goblin village. Then, while slowly walking with the intention of eliminating her, he made it clear that he thought it would be better to eliminate her there to avoid future problems. Then, while gripping the elf's neck tightly with a bizarre expression, the player commented that, either way, the NPC would simply respawn after being eliminated. But that, on the other hand, he thought it would not be bad to try a different flavor after eliminating monsters for so long. Lin Jie Bai did not like hearing that at all, and, when he tried to do something to stop it, another player grabbed him by the shoulder and emphasized that those other guys were the bosses of the gold farming guild. Then, if they got angry, they could even kick the boy out of the group, and he would not receive a single cent from the raid they had done. That said, he explained that there were many things in the game that were hard to swallow, because some players were there only looking for excitement. And, while the leaders of the group prepared to eliminate the elf, the player with MC wanted to know if his sister was not still waiting for the money for her medical treatment. But as soon as Lin Jie heard the elf screaming, begging to be saved, he firmly gripped his sword, channeled tremendous power into it, and then threw it, striking the player directly in the chest and thus preventing him from eliminating the elf. With that, at the same moment, the other players wanted to know what MC was thinking, but he reflected that no one believed he would really eliminate a boss of the gold farming guild with a single sword strike because of an NPC. Because of that, he received his first red name in his life in the game. But, at that moment, the sword in his hand was faster than his consciousness, and his body was faster than his evaluation of the pros and cons, especially because he could no longer bear to just watch what he was witnessing, since it was clearly wrong as hell. Then, he knew that someone had definitely done something wrong, since the game's dynamic mission system would make a new identical elf respawn in 10 minutes. However, he wanted to know what would happen to the one he was seeing on the ground. In addition, certain rules of the game tacitly approve or even encourage this pure evil. So, at least within his field of vision, and while he could still wield his sword, he should judge based on his own sense of right and wrong. Then, at the time, he shouted to all the players that anyone who thought what he had done was unacceptable should come at him, because he would eliminate them. Therefore, after remembering this, he calls out to Karen and asks if she wanted to know what gives him the right to dictate her rules. And, while defending himself from Karen's attack, he says that the fact that he still chooses to draw his sword in another world for a faint trace of kindness, her pain, her rebellion, and the warm memories in her treasure vault, even if he cannot completely sympathize with them, he can still understand that feeling of not wanting to lose them. Karen becomes confused upon hearing this, but Lin Jie prepares himself and, as he advances very close to the boss of Shadow Street, makes it clear that her method is wrong, because she armed even the softest part of her heart with sharp thorns, and in the end, she ended up piercing the people who truly cared about her, and even herself. Karen becomes furious, raises her sword, and tells MC to shut up. Both of them cross swords, and MC notices an exposed opening. Then, he knows that now he can freely choose how to deliver a fatal blow. Therefore, he quickly spins his sword, and while attacking Karen, who is surprised by such a move, thinks that he should, just like teaching a disobedient child a lesson, use the rigid tip of the scabbard to strike her firmly and mercilessly. Then, he stops the blow and merely hits the forehead of the boss of Shadow Street, who in turn feels the hit she took and fills her eyes with tears. After that, she falls to her knees on the ground and starts rubbing the spot that hurts. Lin Chi watches her and comments that he admits defeat. A few seconds later, Karen is surprised by what she is seeing. Then, she wants to know if the Night Spectre's blade has a scabbard, because as far as she knows, the weapon never had one. Lin Jie wants to know if the sword was a gift from Mayor Oliver Green, because, from what he remembers, the Night Spectre originally had a scabbard, and this is also the secret he discovered in Karen's treasure vault. She says that is impossible, because the Night Spectre blade does not need a scabbard, especially because sheathing the sword means compromise, and nothing can subdue her will. MC says that hoping she could hide her sharp blade inside a scabbard was the mayor's original intention when he gave her the sword, and even if she has the wildest ambitions in her heart, she must be reinforced by a certain conscience. Then, he gives a faint smile and says he calls that goodwill. She is surprised to hear this. Half an hour earlier, at the mayor's house, he was asking the Blade of Dawn to help him persuade his daughter to change her mind and stop doing bad things. And, as for the reward, MC only had to name the price. Lin Jie asked for 10 silver coins. At that very moment, the mayor accepted the proposal. Then, after MC fell into Karen's treasure vault, he accidentally triggered a hidden mission. So, the 10 silver coins he lost to Karen ended up back in his pocket. In addition, he knew that he had done a good deed in the end, and received a good reward for it. Therefore, after remembering this, he drives the Night Spectre into the ground, and makes it clear that the undrawn sword is the sharpest sword of all. Then, he emphasizes that this is a special period, and that the city of Mel needs her, and so does the mayor. Karen smiles and comments that she never would have imagined she would actually lose to a stinky player who took a mission. In addition, it is no wonder he managed to obtain the title of Blade of Dawn. Then, she emphasizes that she, Karen, boss of Shadow Street, lost to him in the duel. That said, she begins to stand up and says she will do as he said. From that moment on, the city of Mel will no longer have a Shadow Street, nor will there be a boss, because for now, there will only be Karen of the city of Mel. However, upon hearing this, her henchmen are completely shocked, wanting to know how they are going to support themselves. She says they will simply run the loan sharking business, because she heard that novice players must be short on money. Lin Jie, upon hearing this, wants to know if there is any difference compared to what she was doing before. But Karen explains that the money will be used as an investment to help the city maintain public order and ensure the safety of its surroundings. Therefore, that counts as Karen doing an act of goodwill. Lin Ji comments that he thinks this will work and that the mayor should be very happy to hear such news about his daughter. With that, MC is notified by the system that he has completed the mission and that his reputation in the city of Mel has increased by another 1,000 points. Therefore, after that, and already on the next day, Lin Jie is in the center of the square, reflecting that Karen's famous sword, the Night Spectre, was returned to her. Then, at the moment, he is back to the situation of not having a weapon in hand, since he remembers that, ever since his great sword was broken by the Night Spectre last time, the branch of the World Tree reverted to the state of a stick. But although the wooden stick is usable, its base damage attributes are very low, and obviously, it can no longer keep up with his level. So now, he knows that the top priority is to obtain a new weapon. Then, after walking around the city center for a while, he sees a crowd of people gathered together and someone shouting, saying that they are no longer joking around and that they, as brothers, have decided to quit the game and get rid of the treasures they possess. Then, the players point to a sword and announce that Karsi Mel, a super rare legacy artifact, is looking for its owner. Lin Jie has in mind that the weapon is actually the sword of the legendary sword saint, Karsi Mel, and that this person is a dominant hero in the history of the game era, and even the name of the city was taken from the title of this legendary sword saint. But it is a pity that such a legacy weapon serves only as decoration and has no practical use. The people around them, very surprised, comment that they cannot believe someone is actually selling a divine legacy artifact in the starting city. Others want to know how much the sword is being sold for. Meanwhile, MC reflects that people who have never seen the sword before may mistakenly think that the divine legacy artifact is very powerful. Then the player shouts, saying that everyone has asked an excellent question. Then, he says that he is not selling the sword, but giving it away for free. That said, he thinks that, speaking of this opportunity to get rich, he really has to thank a certain person, because last time, due to bad luck, he ended up eliminating himself by poisoning and accidentally lost 2 levels. To keep up with the group's progress, he had no choice but to sacrifice his own rest time to leave the city and defeat monsters. As a result, he was unlucky again, since the bridge collapsed while he was crossing the river. Then, in the end, after searching at the bottom of the water, he unexpectedly touched a divine legacy artifact, the sword of Karsi Mel. Then, looking at his partner, he thought that they had finally hit the jackpot by finding something so rare. Therefore, at that very moment, they returned to the city and went to find an expert to verify its authenticity. The person responsible for the appraisal said that the sword was indeed a divine artifact, but it was nothing but trash, and that they should keep it only as a souvenir. So, in the end, to their misfortune, they learned that the sword was actually useless trash, sold for at most 10 copper coins. Then, he knew that life could not get any more unlucky, so he decided to use it as bait to fish for more money. With that in mind, they came up with a plan, and while one waited while sitting down, the other commented that he would tell everyone the rules to obtain the sword as a reward, because they had decided to determine the winner with a game of fate through arm wrestling. Therefore, if someone won an arm wrestling match against his partner, they could take the sword completely for free, and the rules are very simple and do not deceive anyone. At that moment, a barbarian class player shouts, wanting to know if the guys in front of him are really giving away a divine artifact like that for free. Meanwhile, MC becomes intrigued, wondering if he should try, because he has in mind that the world tree can fuse with any weapon, and theoretically, it can also work with the broken sword, and perhaps there will be unexpected effects. Then the barbarian class player begins to brag, and afterward, he thinks that just by looking at the guy in front of him, anyone can tell that he is not a strength-based player, and that, because of that, he thinks he can definitely win. However, the player makes it clear that not just anyone can go and try, because if the person loses, they will have to give him 1 silver coin as the trial price. The barbarian places the silver coin on the table and makes it clear that he will be betting his entire net worth of 1 silver coin to play 1 round with the player Zaro, since he has in mind that the guy in front of him is so skinny that he definitely has no strength and that he will beat him no matter how he tries. Meanwhile, Lin Jie, watching this, thinks that with his strength value, he should not lose, and because of that, he thinks he will try after they finish. Zaro firmly grips the barbarian's hand and thinks that he took the bait, because with his silent weakness curse, he can reduce the strength value of players who come into contact with his body by 10 points. Therefore, while using his skill, he reflects that players in the beginner village are usually around level 5, and that, even if they allocate all their points into strength, they still will not be able, after suffering the curse, to surpass his strength value. Then, in a matter of seconds, after the barbarian has his strength value drastically reduced, Zaro easily manages to win the confrontation. The player becomes sad and shouts that he has lost his entire net worth. At that moment, MC appears and asks if he could try as well. Zaro becomes excited when he sees that it is the Blade of Dawn, and comments that he never imagined they would actually attract the presence of someone so important. But he has in mind that the last time he tried to copy the potion he made, it cost him a life for nothing, and he was even mocked for 2 whole days. However, this time, he swears that he will defeat him, because they are finally facing each other head-on. Lin Jie, observing the expression of the player in front of him, thinks he has the feeling that he wants to eliminate him at all costs. Meanwhile, the two players talk through a private group between themselves, and one of them comments that MC possesses an information advantage that surpasses ordinary players, and that he even thinks he must be a closed beta player. But the player, who is going to face him, asks his partner to simply enjoy how he will humiliate him. Therefore, Zero's partner points upward and shouts, saying that there is a plane in the sky, but that was only to distract MC's attention, and thus allow his partner to take a potion to increase his strength before the confrontation. He, in turn, reflects that if the Blade of Dawn can exploit the game's loopholes, then he can cheat as well, since, with the enhancement effect of the alchemy potion, he can no longer be his opponent. Lin Ji wants to know if the player is messing with him, because as far as he knows, there are no planes inside the game. But soon, they begin the arm wrestling duel. MC comments that Zaro was fine a moment ago, so he wants to know why he is suddenly giving off smoke. Zaro, feeling the effect of the potion he took, laughs, and makes it clear that he cannot wait to defeat MC. However, as soon as Lin Jie uses force, something is hurled violently against a wall. Then, the system warns that someone had their arm fractured, was disarmed, and stunned. Lin Jie looks at the damage on the wall and quickly wants to know what happened. Then, the system warns about violent explosion and that NPCs who activate this passive skill will be unable to use the right hand that came into contact with it to perform physical attacks. In addition, they will be disarmed and enter a stunned state. MC thinks that he never imagined a simple arm wrestling match would involuntarily trigger his disarming skill. Then, seeing Zero completely defeated on the ground, he reflects that when facing a player attacking unarmed, the repulsion effect acts directly on the player's body. Therefore, since the person was thrown away, he thinks it can be said that he won the duel, since his skill treated the player's arm as a weapon and disarmed it. At that moment, Zero's friend comments that he never imagined MC would take their bait and that, without a doubt, he had underestimated him more than once as his partner's sworn enemy. Lin Jie becomes confused and quickly wants to know who they are. The player becomes nervous and makes it clear to MC that he is going too far, especially because he never imagined that he really does not remember who they are. Lin Jie does not care at all and comments that since he won, he will take the sword. The player says that it is not that simple. Therefore, he turns around and shouts for the guards. Then, he points at MC and says that he injured his partner. That said, he emphasizes that this is definitely intentional injury, using cruel methods, to the point that he needs to stay in prison for at least 24 hours. Lin Jie is stunned upon hearing this and wonders if there is even such a trick, because apparently, the variety of player scams in the game is truly endless, especially since they even use the guards in their schemes. However, the guards recognize the Blade of Dawn and greet him good morning. MC realizes that they are the guards he saved from the confrontation against Griffin, and thinks that matches in which it is agreed not to use lethal force are allowed in the game. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the guards do not interfere. The player, upon seeing the guard talking friendly with MC, immediately wants to know if they are in this together. But he starts wondering if the Blade of Dawn has some kind of suspicious under-the-table agreement with the game developers, and whether, by any chance, all the NPCs in the game have to bow down to him. Then, the guard makes it clear that the confrontation that took place was peaceful, and that it did not involve intentional injury. However, he says that the players Jabba and Zero are suspected of scams and cheating in the game. That said, while chaining the player, he informs him that they have applied a punishment to his account, banning it for 24 hours. The player, in turn, comments that everything happened unfairly and that it is obvious MC won by exploiting a loophole in the game. But the guards do not care at all and carry Jabba off to prison. Lin Jie, while taking the sword of Karsi Mel, comments that he hopes the players are no longer scammers. Then, someone from the top of a house observes MC, laughs, and comments that what he just witnessed was interesting. Then, he comments that, apparently, he has gathered items related to Karsi Mel. but he wants to know whether the boy is worthy, because he will test him to see if he truly is. Meanwhile, Linji raises Carcimel's sword high and discovers that the weapon is a restored version. It grants a base attack power between 75 and 145. When it resonates with the sword oath, he will receive a huge increase. In conjunction with the world tree, the 10th sprout of the tree absorbs the combat memories of all the legacy divine artifacts poured out by the Sword Saint and gradually awakens its full power as its state increases. The MC is surprised and thinks that it is just as expected of a Sword Saint's legacy weapon, since it truly synergizes with his second talent, the Sword Oath. Then, he concludes that it will be an honor to test the new weapon. So, upon opening the map, he realizes that the monsters near the city are too low level, so he needs to find a place with stronger monsters. But currently, the level progression of most players should be around level 5. Therefore, he discovers that the leveling area recommended by the system is the level 5 zone in the Whispering Forest. But according to the current trends among players, the Whispering Forest should already be overcrowded, making it unsuitable for a solo player like him. So, he concludes that he might as well skip stages to train and take the chance to test the power of the Nameless Ruins, opened in the new version. With that in mind, 1 hour later, the MC arrives at the Nameless Ruins area, and it does not take long for him to see several level 7 giant wolves ahead. And as the creatures charge forward, Linjie is intrigued by the monster's level and reflects that it is no wonder there is not a single soul there. But, as he releases his power throughout his body, he thinks that he does not care about that, because whether they are level 6 or 7, to him, there is not much difference. The giant wolves charge at him with everything they have, but the MC does not care at all, counterattacks them all at once, and shouts, telling the creatures to all turn into experience points. Without much difficulty, Lin Jim manages to slaughter the giant wolves, but he keeps in mind that from the looks of it, ordinary level 7 monsters are still too weak, since they cannot even withstand a basic strike. But at the moment, only an elite monster of at least level 7 would be able to exchange blows with him. However, as soon as he takes a step forward, he feels a strong tremor that leaves him worried. Then, Lin Ji feels an intense pressure and soon wonders what the hell is going on. After that, he hears a tremendous roar until he realizes that he has been taken to another place and thinks that he seems to have entered the exclusive domain of some boss, but wonders whether it could be some map bug. But as he approaches a huge gate, he reflects that according to the memories of his past life, a very small number of legacy-level bosses in the game possess exclusive domains. But once a person enters, unless they fulfill the conditions to defeat the boss, they cannot leave. Then Lin Jie is notified that he is in the area of the Sword Valley of the Supreme Abyss. The MC begins to open the gate, thinking that there must be something unusual inside, because even before revealing its true form, it has already displayed such terrifying suppressive power. But since he is already there, no matter what it is, he will defeat whatever is inside, no matter the cost. However, something is already coming straight toward him with full force. Lin Jie is startled, and in a matter of seconds, if he had not used his sword to defend himself, he would have been hit head-on. The MC is thrown backward by the impact, and as he gets ready, he thinks that he felt a powerful aura. An old man passes through the gate and then comments that the boy being able to receive his sword strike and stay alive means that he has obtained the qualification for the sword test. Having said that, he says that the sword in the boy's hand was originally placed in the memorial. Therefore, the old man makes it clear that if the MC does not pass the sword test, the sword itself will be placed back in the memorial. In addition, the boy's talent, the Sword Oath, will also be revoked by him. Lin Ji, very surprised, starts wanting to know about the sword test the old man mentioned, until, after taking a closer look at the old man in front of him, he ends up remembering that he is Carcimel. Then, he begins to remember when he chose the Sword Oath skill. At that time, Outlet made it clear that a true swordsman serves only one weapon in his life, and that the talent the boy chose was created by a legendary sword saint, the famous Carcimel. Thus, practitioners of such a technique would be considered guardians of the Sword Oath, obtaining extraordinary sword abilities, but they could only fight with one sword for their entire lives. So, he wanted to know if the boy was sure about that choice. Back then, Lin Jie answered that this was the path he wanted to walk. After the MC remembers this, Carcy Mel, after hearing the boy call his name, wants to know if the young man knows him. Lin Jie reflects that he more than just knows him, since, in the memories of his past life, Carcy Mel always wore a mask and never revealed his true face. Then, he spent an entire week just to pass his sword test. At that moment, the old man calls the MC Dawnblade and Dragon Slayer and says that he has gathered the guardian of the sword oath he established and the fragments of his legacy, the divine artifact. But, while releasing his fearsome power, Carcy Mel makes it clear that whether the boy is qualified or not to possess these powers he mentioned, he will personally judge him to see if he is worthy. Having said that, he says that he is the wind-riding sword saint, Carcy Mel, and, as the founder of Mel City, he challenges the MC. Lin Jie grips the sword tightly and prepares himself. Then, he calls Carcy Mel a grumpy old man, because he wanted to start a fight less than a minute after they met, without giving him any time to prepare. However, the MC observes the old man channeling power and thinks that he is Carcy Mel, the wind-riding sword saint, the pinnacle of swordsmanship, and that people believe that abandoning other swordsmanship skills and retaining only this skill, the wind-riding sword, is enough to reach first place in the swordsmanship rankings. But he knows that, since the game's release, only 2 people have passed the old man's test. The old man, in turn, smiles and calls the boy to begin the test. Lin Jie is completely shocked upon feeling the old man's powerful aura, and, immediately afterward, he needs to block a sudden attack. The MC grows worried when he realizes the speed of the sword and thinks that it is as fast as the wind. While watching the old man come at him once again, the MC reflects that, in order to reach the peak of swordsmanship, in his past life, he did not pass the sword test before level 20. But at the moment, he is only level 5, and even so, he has to face the old man's trial much earlier compared to his past life. So, very worried, he thinks that, after returning 5 years later, he is facing the sword test once again, but this time, without any preparation. However, he barely has time to think before he is already hit by the old man. And, as he is thrown backward, he reflects that all he has left is to try making one last stand. Carcy Mel gives him no opening, and soon launches a few more attacks, shouting and calling the MC a child, saying that the sword test will not be so easy to pass. Lin Jie activates his enhanced grip skill and realizes that, even if he tries to parry, he will still suffer residual damage from the wind blade. Therefore, he chooses to jump and dodge the attacks. Carcy Mel, upon seeing this, comments that the boy's reflexes are quick, but as he launches more attacks, he makes it clear that swinging the sword purely by instinct is not enough. Lin Jie observes the attacks coming toward him at high speed and thinks that the old man's attacks are still as troublesome as they were 5 years ago. After all, he keeps in mind that one day, 5 years ago, he failed the sword test because it had been 117 attempts, and yet he failed every single one. So, he thought that the power of the Wind Sword Saint was as immense as a mountain. However, even while injured, he would pick up the sword and always rise again to try once more. And, even with many wounds all over his body, he wanted to win the sword test at any cost. Carcy Mel had said that he was certainly persistent, and that, because of that, he would make the boy face reality once again. After remembering this, and seeing the attack coming straight toward him with full force, he reflects that it was the same back then, but after the 1057th attempt, he passed the sword judgment. So, while being hit by the attacks, he concludes that the old man is merely another stepping stone on the path he is walking, because he keeps in mind that he can clearly become the strongest. Carcy Mel, upon seeing the boy get caught by his attacks, wants to know if he is perhaps planning to give up resisting. However, Lin Jie shouts for Griffin's golden bell to be activated. With that, the artifact's effect begins to block the attacks. Then, the MC activates his berserker skill, and, while his power begins to overflow everywhere, he makes it clear that even if the test arrived earlier than he expected, he is still worthy of it at the moment. Having said that, he picks up the sword and emphasizes that he must use 100% of his strength to face the old man, and that this is how he respects the sword judgment. Carcy Mel grows excited when he notices that the boy's fighting spirit has suddenly increased. but he wants the MC to show his true strength. The MC, in turn, prepares himself and charges forward with everything he has. Mel blocks the boy's attack and, laughing, comments that it was still nothing special. However, he ends up being surprised because the MC swung his sword and released a burst of power. Mel is sent flying away, but Lin Jie does not stand still and quickly charges forward with full force. And as soon as he gets a little closer, he unleashes another circular slash attack. But this time, the old man blocks it. Mel, surprised, wants to know how a player who has not even left the starting city yet can do all this. The MC comments that the power of the wind-riding sword lies in the fact that the swung blade carries the power of the wind, creating long-range damage similar to magical attacks. But he points out that he also has his own long-range attack methods. Having said that, he activates his pressure strength increase, and even more power overflows throughout his body. Mel prepares himself and asks the MC if he perhaps thought that the old man in front of him would not be able to deal with this. Lin Jie prepares his next attack and shouts, telling the old man to try to withstand his next attack. Then, after getting ready, he says that it is his piercing rainbow skill. Immediately afterward, he throws his sword, imbued with all his power, with everything he has. Mel comments that the move the boy just made is one he has never seen before. Then, he wants to know how that is possible and who the boy truly is. However, upon seeing the sword approaching at high speed, he has to create a barrier. And as soon as the sword collides with the barrier, it begins to crack from the powerful impact. The old man grows worried because the wind barrier he created to stop the attack is about to be broken, until, finally, the barrier is shattered, and Mel is struck head-on by the sword. But he quickly grabs it with his hand, and, with an intimidating presence, wonders whether he really failed to completely block the attack even with his wind barrier. Then, he drives the sword into the ground with full force. At that moment, while the MC falls to his knees on the ground, he begins coughing up a lot of blood. Then, he comments that it is a pity he could not defeat the old man with that attack, but makes it clear that he still has not defeated him either. Mel says that he admires the boy's all-or-nothing gamble, but unfortunately, he will not have another chance to defeat him. Lin Jie stands up and then reflects that the injuries he suffered earlier while blocking the old man's attacks are starting to take their toll. In addition, his health points also cannot keep up with the drain from his berserker skill, and the move from his rainbow skill also cost him his only weapon. However, he knows that he still has one last chance. Mel gives the boy no time to think and quickly attacks with his wind-riding sword skill, shouting for the MC to let the wind show him reality. The MC, in turn, still paying close attention to each of the old man's movements, thinks that this is his small chance to win. Then, activating his light charge buff, he dodges the attack and, after leaping into the air, thinks that by discarding his main weapon, he can reduce his weight, making himself lighter and improving his evasion. Then, he dodges another attack and charges forward with everything he has. Mel, seeing this, comments that without the weight of the greatsword, he knows the boy can use lighter and faster steps for a perfect dodge. So, he thinks that this is definitely the mindset of a divine-level combatant. Lin Jie, in turn, just as he is about to punch the old man, activates his grip skill, but Mel activates his wind barrier once again and shouts, telling the boy not to be so arrogant. The MC puts more force into his strike and sees that he is managing to create cracks in the defense. Then, he puts even more power into his fist and lands another punch on the barrier. The old man grows worried when he sees that the boy truly plans to break his barrier, and as soon as the MC manages to overcome the block, Mel is forced to retreat backward, so he will not give an opening and be struck head-on by the blow. But as he retreats, Lin Jie does not give up and advances again. However, when he hits the old man, he realizes that it is a wind illusion. With that, Mel appears right behind the boy and then launches his wind-riding sword attack. Lin Jie manages to dodge at the last second, but the old man shouts, saying that the fight is over, because judging by the boy's current health, he will definitely be eliminated in moments. With his health points extremely low, Lin Jie looks at the sword and points out that it is still far too early for the old man to claim victory. Mel, in turn, reflects that that series of storm-like attacks forced him to retreat defensively. So, in the end, he shifted his position back and gave the boy an opening to approach his sword again. Then, he wonders if everything was part of the young man's plan, but he ends up concluding that the boy's relentless attacks, even at the risk of a close combat rupture, were actually meant to make him change his battle position backward. Therefore, he laughs and comments that he will not give the MC that chance. Having said that, he charges forward with everything he has, saying that with that last sliver of life, it is impossible for the MC to withstand a single strike from his wind-riding sword. Lin Ji grabs his sword and then activates his death rest skill, making it clear that he never planned to escape in the first place. Mel is startled when he sees that the boy used such a skill. Then, he comments that it is a special warrior skill that can restore a portion of health points when health is low. Thus, the more the health points are reduced, the more additional health the skill can restore. Then he concludes that from the looks of it, the boy had been saving his final chance to turn the tables all along. But even so, he attacks and shouts, saying that he will not give him that chance. Lin Ji tries to withstand the attack, and because his skill is active, as his health points are reduced, they are quickly restored. However, the old man's attack is continuous and ends up making the MC worried, wondering whether his skill will be able to sustain it. But as soon as Mel's attacks stop, he thinks that he managed to endure it in the end. The old man, completely shocked, thinks that the boy used his skill to absorb all the damage from his attack head-on. Then, he wonders if that is a calculation a human could make. Lin Jie gives a faint smile and makes it clear that victory or defeat will depend on his next move. Thus, Lin Jie activates the double berserker skill, and his power explodes throughout his entire body. And not only that, the energy begins to spread throughout the area. The MC, consumed by fury, thinks that he successfully managed to activate double berserker. However, he keeps in mind that each stack of berserker mode costs him 1% of his health per second. So, with him at the double stage, it means losing 2% per second. Therefore, his remaining 5% of health can only sustain the enhancement for 2 seconds. Keeping that in mind, he firmly grips his sword and reflects that the last 2 seconds will have to be enough to defeat the old man. Then, he prepares himself, focuses, and throws his sword with the piercing rainbow skill. A powerful force shoots toward the old man at super speed. The old man, in turn, watches the attack approaching far too quickly. Then, he becomes extremely worried, wondering whether he will be able to stop it. The MC's attack reaches its destination, and a powerful impact occurs. However, the attack passed beside Mel's head, and, because of the skill's massive damage, went straight through the enormous rock. After that, unfortunately, the MC's double berserker mode ends, and he becomes completely exhausted. The old man looks back and, seeing the destruction the attack caused, wants to know if the piercing rainbow move is one of the boy's skills. Because if it is, he thinks that, even though there are so many cool moves he could use in the game, he wants to know why he stubbornly chose a playstyle different from his main one. Lin Jie replies that it is because he simply prefers to fight in his own way and have his own style. Mel comments that, in the end, the boy missed the piercing rainbow attack on purpose. Then, while pulling the MC's sword back with his skill, he congratulates him and informs him that he passed the sword test. Having said that, he throws his weapon back to him and emphasizes that as a reward, he will repair the broken blade of the weapon. And as soon as Lin Jie takes back his sword, the old man comments that, in the name of the wind-riding sword saint, he once again grants the title of Guardian of the Sword's Oath to the Blade of Dawn and Dragon Slayer, Lin Ji. Then, while the MC sits on the ground and drinks some medium healing potions, the old man continues by saying that the boy's strength really made him see him in a new light, and that, among the players who have taken the sword test so far, the boy is the lowest level one. Lin Jie becomes intrigued upon hearing this. Then, he wants to know if the old man meant that someone had already passed the sword test before him. Mel gives an awkward laugh, but replies that yes, there was one person. Having said that, he explains that the person is around the same age as the MC, and that he also chose the path of the sword from the very beginning. The MC becomes thoughtful about this, but the old man also says that the other person's choice was a little different from his, since he chose a one-handed sword to be lighter. and that his name was Bali Changcheng. Upon hearing that name, Lin Jie cannot believe it, wondering how this is possible. Then he begins to remember that the two of them had promised they would become stronger through their own strength and, afterward, eventually have a confrontation to see who was stronger. However, when he faced his friend and was betrayed, he wanted to know why he preferred to use cheats and betray the promise they had made to each other. To make matters worse, when that happened, Bailey Changcheng commented that they were not good brothers. And, as the MC lamented having been betrayed, his friend emphasized that there was no point in saying anything else because he had already lost, and Lin Jie should accept that fact. Besides, what he did was for Lin Jie's own good because he had a reason for doing what he did. After remembering this, Lin Jie becomes furious, thinking about his friend Bailey Changcheng, until Carcimel, seeing the boy's state, comments that apparently his latency is very high. Then, he wants to know if he wants to consider upgrading his broadband. The MC grabs the old man's arm with all his strength and then shouts, wanting to know where Bailey Changcheng, the person the old man mentioned, is. Carcimel asks the boy to calm down first, but wants to know if this Bailey guy happens to have some kind of grudge against him. Lin Jie says that this guy is an unforgivable traitor. Then, he wants to know where he is. Having said that, even more furious, he makes it clear that he will find him and eliminate him. However, Carcimel says that when he saw Bailey Changcheng, he was not as the MC described him. So, he thinks the boy must have mistaken him for someone else. Lin Jie comments that this is impossible because he would not remember wrong, even if the guy turned to ashes. Carcimel says that when Bailey Changcheng passed the test, he gave it his all, ending up covered in bruises and wounds. Having said that, he points out that his eyes were eyes of determination without a trace of hesitation, and that he had also said he wanted to become the strongest by relying on the sword in his hand. Then, Carcimel says that the young man, even when he knocked him to the ground several times, still got back up and asked him to test him once more. He even said harsh words to him, saying that he could do whatever he wanted and that he should not hold back, because he wanted to defeat him fairly and honestly. Lin Jie, upon learning this, thinks that those words are so familiar because, in the beginning, his friend had the same thoughts as him, wanting to become the strongest fairly and honestly. However, indignant about the situation, he asked the old man not to be deceived by what Bailey Changcheng said and did, because from what he thinks, the old man is only looking at Bailey Changcheng as he is now, but in the future, he chose the wrong path and betrayed everything he believed in. Carcimel becomes confused and immediately wants to know how the MC knows what will happen to him in the future. Therefore, Lin Jie realizes that the current Bailey Changcheng has not yet become the traitor he has in his memory. After all, the current Bailey Changcheng still maintains the pure heart of wanting to stand at the pinnacle of kings by relying on his own strength. Carcimel points out to the MC that the obsession in his heart is like a sharp sword, capable of cutting through many obstacles, but it is also the easiest thing to make him lose his way. Having said that, he explains that when he returned there carrying the weight of the past, he had already decided on an outcome regarding the future. But, before disappearing, he says that the boy bet all his emotions on this, but destiny is a story that cannot be predetermined, since the future in his memory lacks the most crucial variable, which is his present decision. Therefore, Lin Jie concludes that the one he wants to take revenge on is not Bailey Changcheng, but rather the reason that forced him to betray his own beliefs. Then, the MC begins to remember that he first met his friend during the mission to defend Grace Castle, and, due to a system error, more than 10 times the normal number of monsters appeared to surround the city. All the players who took part in the resistance were eliminated in combat, leaving only 2 players standing before the destroyed city gates, Bailey Changcheng and the MC. At the time, the blondie commented that it was not easy for the MC to have lasted that long, but he emphasized that, although they both came from different places, they shared a common hobby in which they both used swords, something that felt like destiny. Lin Jie commented that for things that could be solved with a single strike, the blondie only seemed to use such elegant skills. The blondie, in turn, called the MC a brute and made it clear that what he had done was called elegance, because he did not want to end up covered in blood, until a portal opened and one of the monsters blew the horn loudly to call more creatures. Bali Chung Chung commented that when the monster wave ended, the MC's combat record was about to be surpassed. Lin Ji, very excited, made it clear that the guy would need to try harder to manage that. And so, they both headed into the confrontation together. After defeating a large number of the creatures, Baili Chung Chung commented that he had a dream, in which he wanted to rely on the sword in his hand to become the strongest. Lin Jie laughed and commented that it was a coincidence, because that was also his dream. Then, after the monster boss appeared before the two of them, Baili Chung Chung commented that from the looks of it, the path to reaching the limit would eventually make them rivals. However, he emphasized that, even so, before they became enemies, he wanted to know if the MC would like to become his friend at that moment. Lin Jie was intrigued by the question, because, judging by the blondie, he obviously seemed like a young master surrounded by stars and should not be without friends around him. So, he wanted to know why Baili Chung Chung wanted to become his friend. The blondie, acting charming, replied that the MC used the worst equipment and the worst weapons, but even so, he was ahead of him, who was covered in expensive equipment, making him the only player who could fight by his side. Having said that, he said that he was very confused about why the MC's strength could surpass the limits of the system, to the point that the game he played had turned into something completely different. Therefore, he wanted to know if the MC had used some dubious method because he could not help but suspect it in his heart. After all, he only truly realized it when he saw him fight up close, because he thinks the MC must possess a strength that surpasses that of a genius. Then, Baili Chung Chung also said that in the past, he believed his combat skills had reached the absolute peak of 100%, but even with such low-level equipment, the MC reached that same level, which meant that his strength had surpassed 100%. Lin Ji commented that there was nothing strange about that. But while the creatures charged at both of them, the blondie said that he wanted to treat the MC as a mirror so that he could see himself more clearly. After all, he believed that, on the path to becoming the strongest, the person he would eventually face would be him. After saying that, without mercy, he used his fast sword technique on the monsters that approached. As for the MC, he only remained silent upon hearing this, but an attack was heading in his direction. However, with extreme ease and with just a swing of his arm, he completely exterminated the creature that was attacking him. And he still made it clear that, unfortunately, he did not like guys who reeked too much of money. But, while both of them fought non-stop, the blondie commented that if the MC were an ordinary player, at that moment, his equipment should not be inferior to his. But he had exchanged all the equipment he had worked so hard to obtain for money. Lin Ji commented that this was precisely the difference between them caused by their respective stories. So, he needed to make money from the game, while the blondie, on the other hand, could easily bring material wealth from the real world into the game. After defeating the monster he was facing, Baili Chung Chung pointed out that his equipment set had been entirely obtained through his own strength, and that the sword he wielded had been broken by him during the previous day's enhancement. Lin Ji was intrigued upon hearing this, but in front of the entrance portal to the final boss, Baili Chung Chung still commented that, even if it was only valid during the defense of Grace Castle, he wanted them to fight as brothers. And, as soon as they bumped fists, the blondie commented that the MC should treat it as a limited mission brotherhood. Then, after remembering everything that happened in his past life, Lin Jie, looking at Carcimel's sword etched in his memory, reflects that, in the beginning, Baili Chung Chung was also someone who loved battles and improving his skills. Keeping that in mind, he considers that perhaps in this life, his friend can still be saved. Then, he takes the sword, places it on his shoulder, and thinks that the game seems to be getting interesting. But before finding Baili Chung Chung, he needs to surpass his strength by 100 times. After all, he needs to teach him a proper lesson face-to-face on how to be a decent person. However, he hears a strange noise and immediately turns around to see what it is. Then he shouts, saying that he advises the person not to hide, otherwise he will eliminate them when he finds them. The knight immediately comes out from behind the rock and shouts, telling the MC that he is Hawk, whom he met in real life. Having said that, he runs up to Lin Ji, grabs him by the waist, and says that, thank God, he still remembers who he is. After all, He knew his big brother would accept him as a disciple, and there was no way he would not remember his name. Linjie asks the knight to stop talking nonsense and makes it clear that he still has not accepted him as a disciple. However, he wants to know what he is doing there. After all, that place is the level 6 unnamed ruins, and since the knight is level 5, he should not be farming there. Hawk says that he spotted the MC on the road, but could not keep up with his pace. So, after finally tracking him to the ruins, the MC simply disappeared into thin air, and after that, he ended up getting lost too. But a few minutes later, he walked around the place and only attracted a bunch of monsters that could eliminate him instantly, which scared him so much that he had to hide in the bushes and did not dare to come out. After all, he did not expect the MC to suddenly appear right in front of him half an hour later. Lin Jie, stunned after hearing the story, comments that, in the end, the knight was suppressed by the monster's levels, but he wants to know if he needed something. However, since that place is still very dangerous for Hawk, he thinks it would be better for them to change locations first. Therefore, Lin Ji activates a return portal to his house, which functions as a teleport that can be used once every hour. The knight is surprised by the portal the MC opened. Lin Ji wants to know what is wrong with that, and whether opening a portal to the city is not a common function. Hawk says that opening a portal to the city costs 1 silver coin each time he does it. So, it is an expense he cannot afford at the moment. The MC comments that it is fine, because since he has the highest reputation level in the city of Mel, teleportation has become free. After that, 15 minutes later, both of them return and go to the MC's house, and he, in turn, is intrigued by a treasure map. Hawk, looking a little embarrassed, says it was something that dropped when he eliminated some monsters, but that he feels too weak to try to complete the treasure map. Then, he explains that he wanted to find someone he trusted to help him, and then he found the MC. That said, while he starts trembling all over, he emphasizes that he is offering all the treasure from the map, because he only wants to get a little experience from the MC's kills. Lin Ji takes the treasure map and comments that it is indeed a great offer, but he wants to know if the knight is really going to leave all the items like that. He comments that, in the end, he is not very good at fighting, and that the treasure map is like a worthless piece of paper to him. Then, as he starts trembling even more, he slams his head on the table and shouts that he hopes to learn combat skills from the MC. Lin Ji comments that, according to the usual rules of the gold farming group, providing information gives the knight the right to half of the loot. Then, he grabs his sword and makes it clear that he will not break that rule and that he will accept the knight's offer. However, the knight asks the MC to wait a moment because he thinks he should try to solve this kind of thing on his own. That said, he emphasizes that there may be danger, so he does not want the MC to take that risk. Hawk, with a desperate expression, hopes Lin Jie will refuse his request. This leaves Lin Jie intrigued, wondering why Hawk is acting that way, or whether something happened to him while he was away. Even so, he comments that it is fine and that he does not need to be afraid. However, one day earlier, in the real world, some guys are kicking a person in a dark alley, while another person just watches from afar. Then, she approaches the person who was being kicked and asks if he was trying to give up. After all, from what she remembers, he still owes her 150,000. It is Rex who makes it clear that if the guy gives up, there will be no way for him to pay him back. The guy on the ground, badly injured, says he was almost done paying it off, but wants to know how there is still so much left. Rex kicks him and asks if he even knows what a loan shark is. Then, he shouts, explaining that a high-interest loan means the interest is extremely high. So, the money the guy paid him was barely enough to cover the interest. Then, Rex, watching the guy writhe in pain on the ground, wants to know if he does not want to do something to get rid of his debts, because he can give him one last chance. The guy in question, lying on the ground, is the Night Hawk from the game. Rex asks him to make that brat Lin Ji give him some gold coins, and Hawk's debt can be completely forgiven if he does it. That said, while leaving, he points out that if the MC is eliminated in the game, Hawk will be able to survive in real life too. After that, back in the present, Lin Ji and the knight arrive at the location marked on the map. The MC comments that they have arrived where they should be, but when he looks back, he notices Hawk acting strangely. Then, he concludes that it is exactly as he imagined. So, he draws his sword and thinks it can only be that player Rex again. And, upon seeing several players approaching, he is certain that it is clearly him. But even knowing that he cannot defeat him, he does not give up. However, the players who appear together all have a red mark above their characters. Rex calls out to the MC and comments that somehow they have met again. Lin Jie comments that he admires Rex's persistence in picking meaningless fights, but that he has already forgiven him for what happened before. Upon hearing this, the player becomes furious and then shouts that the one who will not forgive him is Rex, because last time he eliminated him once and made him look like an idiot in real life. Because of that, he thinks the MC has no right to anything. Then, he tells Lin Jie to look around, because this time, he is prepared. And, thanks to him, he managed to recruit several red name players. And since he also made Karen close the villains bar in the black market, everyone there, all red named players, has nowhere to go. So, the moment they get close to those places, they will be eliminated by Mel's guards. That said, Rex shouts even louder that all the players there hate the MC and want to eliminate him personally. Lin Jie does not care at all about what Rex said and asks if he is done talking crap. Rex, in turn, draws his dagger, and while running his tongue along the blade, emphasizes that he not only plans to eliminate the MC in the game, but also knows that, in reality, he has a beautiful younger sister and a useless mother. Lin Jie's expression changes instantly when he hears that from the player. But Rex, noticing how the MC reacted when he mentioned his family, comments that apparently the MC's sister and mother are his weakness. Then, he wants to know what would happen to those two women if they were surrounded by a bunch of thugs. And just imagining the MC's agonized expression would already make him incredibly excited. Lin Jie shouts Rex's name and then, with a completely intimidating look, makes it clear that the player has chosen the path to his own death. At that moment, Hawk apologizes to the MC and says that it was not his fault, because he was forced. Then, Rex shouts for all the players to advance and eliminate Dawn Blade. Lin Jie firmly grips his sword and then begins to release his overwhelming power. Then, he emphasizes that they, whether in the game or in reality, are all a bunch of irredeemable scum. One of the players cannot hold himself back and charges at the MC with his ice infusion skill, but Lin Jie moves quickly and cuts the player in half without the slightest mercy. After all, since they all have red names, it will not change his reputation at all. On the contrary, it will only increase it. The others, seeing how the MC eliminated the player, start wondering if it is really possible for a single sword strike to cause an instant elimination. As for Lin Jie, while his power overflows throughout his entire body, he walks past the eliminated player as if he could not care less about what he has just done.